11, starting with general business and public comment. Any member of the public would like to address the board on an item that is not on the agenda, please step forward. Seeing no one, I'll close that portion, bring it back to approval of the minutes of the ABR Monday, May 2nd. Can I have a motion to open that review?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
First by Keith, second by Clay. So anything before item 1? Item 1. Item 2. Item 3, 4, 5, 6. Item 7. Seeing no one, under item 7 of the motion, I was under the impression, it could be wrongly so, that these minutes were a little bit different than what's here. I thought that this seemed to be the initial motion, and I thought that there was some discussion. If any board members feel like this is the accurate, just let me know. I thought we had some discussion on the mass, bulk, and scale, but that may not have been. And if it's pretty well what everyone thinks, it's fine. However, I will be changing my voting to abstention. Overall, a 3-story massing is appropriate to the site, but study refining the 3rd-story massing to maximize light infiltration into the courtyard. So it may just be my impression. So Gloria, can I change my vote to abstention? And then it will be just 6-4 and 1 abstention. Okay, and then item 8. Okay, so that's the, let's see, item 8. Item 9. And that's it. All those in favor of the minutes as reviewed, please say aye. Aye. Against, the motion carries. Okay, that brings us to consent calendar for today, May 16th, 2011. Motion to open those. First by Clay, second by Keith.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder, last week, May 9th, we didn't have any items for consent calendar, so that's why that's not on the agenda.
Okay,
so
thanks.
For today, May 16th, we had item A, 3111 State Street, got final approval with conditions. Item B, Vista del Campo, got final approval with conditions. And item C, 4200 Calle Real, got a final approval as submitted. And these were all landscaping items, and they were reviewed by Chris Gilliland.
Great. Thanks very much. All those in favor of the motion, as the minutes as read, say aye. 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 Against, motion carries. Thanks. So that brings us to announcements, requests for applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items and appeals.
Mr. Chair, I'll be stepping down on item 1.
Thank you, Chris.
Mr. Chair, I as well.
Okay, Chris. And I'll be leaving early today at about 5 o'clock. And Dawn will chair for me in my absence. Okay, subcommittee reports.
I do have one quick announcement regarding withdrawal. 740 Dolores Drive.
Okay.
Had that proposal to add that large 8-foot diameter dish to that existing antenna tower.
Oh, yes?
They withdrew that application. They found that they could, well, they were proposing to remove 2 4-foot dishes, but they found that they can get 2 new 4-foot dishes that are pretty much like for like. They're going to show that to me to confirm that they are like for like and just switch those out, and then they won't need that larger dish.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Thanks, Tony. And then we come to subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee reports? No. That brings us to the end of general business. And to the first item of the evening, 903 West Mission Street. Hey, Gary. Almost ran you over, Gary. Okay, do we have any speaker slips too, Tony? Okay. All right, thanks. I'm just looking to find our last. Okay. Minutes was back in. Okay, so this was March this year. March 7th, final approval with the following conditions. Indicate on the plans the fixed dimensions and prohibited enlargement or relocation of the kitchen window in compliance with City Council resolution, and reproduce resolution on the plans. Confirm that the exterior light fixture provides downcast lighting, and that's it. Tony, do we have to read the letter to the applicant from the assistant planner, or is that something you maybe just want to surmise?
No, I'll have Kelly come down. If she has any comments, she can
Okay,
give
great.
those to you.
So I think we can just proceed.
Okay, I'm Josh Bloomer, AV Design Studio. I'm here with Heidi Ferguson. She's the property owner, and Anthony Ellis from my office.
Could you just press those center buttons so the light goes on there? There you go. Thanks.
Do we need to explain why we're back first? Would that be helpful, or?
Are you doing other than the two items on the motion from final?
Right, we got our final approval from the last visit with you, and
Yes.
then there was an issue was raised, and we made a correction to the design to address that, which I'm going to present to you, and then I believe that puts us where we're at today.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. I mean, I can explain to you the. I don't have the actual code section. I can read for you what the issue was, but I can show you the resolution that we created for the design. So.
Well, explain us what it is you're back for and what caused it, and then then you just tell us how you resolved it and go from there.
The issue was really it was never caught by ourselves or staff. It was brought to our attention and has to do with the cantilever over the rear of the proposed structure. So,
Is that this?
so maybe I should be looking at the site plan. Is that the existing? Okay, so here I am.
Proposed.
Okay, this open yard area, the issue was that there was living space, habitable living space projecting over it. That's what created the cantilever. So we've altered the design to take care of that issue.
Oh, I
I'll bring
see.
it back to you with that revised design. So I'm just going to kind of read through this just so we can cover all of our points.
Okay.
We're here today requesting final approval. You last saw the project March 7th, as we discussed, and gave the project final approval at that time. And then we found out we had the issue, which I just described, and this issue resulted in us having to reduce the cantilever on the south side. We've, in doing so, expanded on the conditions placed on us by the City Council when the appeal of the project was denied. And those comments from City Council are as follows. This is Council members Williams and White to deny the appeal and direct the Architectural Board of Review in their final approval to study the two-story structure to minimize its height, study the cantilever to minimize its size, and to make the window dimensions a condition of approval. And all of those issues have been addressed. They were addressed to your all's satisfaction the last time we were here. And with this recent change, we've, I think, even gone further with the issue relating to the cantilever. We reduced overall height from the time of City Council to coming to you from 8 inches to 16 inches. The roof sloping on the addition. We removed the cantilever completely at this point, or if not considerably, on the elevation that faces into the neighbor's yard. And the window dimensions have been described on the plans. I think to this, I don't have the note in front of me, but you've made a note in the drawings to address the window size and dimension. The exterior light fixture was picked up in the last time through, so let's see, I'll just take you to the elevation I think it best describes. And then we'll look at the building section. There's a couple of things we did to make this work, and I'll take you through those as well. Actually, why don't we start with so we're looking at the second floor plan here. Let's see. So on the second unit, we had a storage unit upstairs. We relocated that to the garage on the first floor, and this allowed us to make the entry work in the unit while pushing this wall, if you recall, was along this line, and now it's pushed in towards control line 6. We also moved the bedroom and the bathroom unit here forward towards the setback, which is this direction here. Let's see, we revised the door and window design on the upper deck and moved the wall to accommodate the minimum 6-foot dimension that we're required to keep here. And it did change, I think it reduced our square footage. Do you have the numbers handy? We can get into that. Right. The real effect is that it reduced the cantilever over the backyard. So I think the point we wanted to make today is that, it's important to note that we've responded and complied with all the requests of the ABR City Council. We've even responded to the neighbors' concerns. The cantilever currently is the issue that we're addressing today. This project's in a neighborhood that has a very eclectic mix of styles. The materials of the buildings are what you'd expect in a residential environment. We've got plaster, wood siding, and we have a metal standing seam roof, which is typical, and there are examples of that in the neighborhood. I think your board has always been pretty consistently, at least in the last few meetings, happy with the mass bulk and scale of the design. And today we're bringing back an even further reduction of that. Let's go to the elevation. I can describe what's changed. When we were looking at pushing the cantilever back, it occurred to us that we should remove the metal siding that was at one point facing this section of wall in the second story. And when we pushed this back, we felt it was an opportunity to bring in the wood siding, which we're using in other parts of the project, and keep the line of our roof overhang and create that this kind of a shape here with the roof. So the roofing material goes over and up. Presents
this is a vertical plane.
That's right. And there's a little bit of a hitch in there. There's to account for the material change. Actually, here shows a section. This is the same section we presented to you last time. You can see where the line was before, and now it's moved in. And then the wood siding is basically a detail that we've covered on the other parts of the building, but just for review, we've got vertical wood members with horizontal wood members affixed directly to them, so it creates a bump out as you come up on the exterior elevation.
And this is where the floor used to come across here?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just in summary, again, this is a modest addition to a small home. Existing home's is 844 square feet. The new second unit is now only 442 square feet. Third garage is much more successful than a carport or a separate parking space. And again, the materiality of the project, I think you're going to hear more from the neighbor who's been pushing against this project consistently, that this is industrial in nature. It's not. It's very much appropriate materials for residents in this neighborhood, and the proportions are just right for this neighborhood. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to you. I think that's really, there's not much to the presentation today. It's simply correcting this issue here. And I think, as always, we've tried to use that as an opportunity to make the project better, and I think in this case it does, and I think it also gives another gesture towards the neighbor of making this a better project.
Okay, just to wrap up your presentation, could you indicate on the plans where the notation for this window is? Just
Yeah, I believe that's on the elevations. Right here.
is that here? To be fixed. Okay, and do you have those dimensions for it being fixed in that
Yeah, on the floor
location and
plan
size?
we've got dimensions, and the head heights are called out here to the right-hand side, and on the window schedule as well.
Okay, and the exterior lighting, that's the downcast lighting, you have some sort of documentation in here?
Yeah, new exterior lighting fixture, 6-inch square, powder coat black finish. Do we have, where's that notated on the drawings?
That's
Mr. Chair, looks like there's a cut
Eight-
sheet on 902.
Is that what it is? Okay.
902. There you go.
Here you are.
Okay, it's capped at the top. That's capped at the top.
That's correct.
Okay.
I guess the only other thing I'd add, I think, just another point, our property owner here has gone out and talked with a lot of our neighbors, because, as you know, there's been some opposition by some select people in the neighborhood. There's, just to pass around, 76 signatures of neighbors in support. I'm sure there's some letters that have been written for and against the project, but there is a lot of support for this in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And they were each neighbor was given this to look at, so 76 names there.
Okay, great. All right, we're going to open it up public comment now. And I have here a number of speaker slips that in the comment line they say they want to give their time to Pam Brandon. So I'm going to call the names and I'd ask you to just indicate who you are. Mercedes Greenberg, Sue Young, Mimi Greenberg, David Jenkins. Okay. All right. So.
By the way, Chris, another change I didn't get into. We used to have 3 bifolding doors along this elevation, and we've reduced that to 1 sliding door and a smaller window.
To the front of the street.
Yeah, just giving that a little bit more privacy.
I see.
Same design, just we played with the windows to accommodate some of the changes in the interior, because basically we lost some feet there.
Okay. So.
Sue Young is not here for Pam. No, I'm with, right, so she's not part of Pam Brandon. She's in support. And I
Okay.
think Mercedes Greenberg and Mimi Greenberg are the same person.
No, I think they're two different. You're right.
Oh, I see. Okay. I didn't know what who the her referred to, which her. Okay. So here's what I'll do is I'm gonna let Pam Brandon speak first, and there are 3 speaker slips after that ask for their time for who to speak. David Jenkins, Mimi Greenberg, and Mercedes Greenberg, and then Pam Brandon will be followed by Sue Young, and then Diane Soto. So, we step out. And you could just press that middle button so the light goes on and then proceed. Thanks.
I'm Pam Brandon. I am the homeowner and neighbor to the project. And today, first thing I want to talk about is that the amended ABR agenda states that this project is up for final review today. Now, at the March 21st ABR meeting, Kelly Broadison announced that the preliminary and final approvals were made void. And the fact remains that those design plans were not legal. Today, apparently, she is trying to retract the void of the preliminary approval. I don't believe that can be done legally based on the information that she's provided. using the reasoning that they can retract the voided approval because City Council approved the design plans is absurd because City Council made their determination off false information that the Planning Department gave them, that the staff provided them. Council members did not know the plans were not in compliance with the municipal code. So once again, the preliminary approval of those plans, they're not legal. It is void. Also, the design plans have changed since it went to City Council beyond the cantilevered section. Some of the other changes include 2 front exterior walls of the second unit have been moved forward, the living room and the bedroom walls. A 10-foot wide window was added, and the private storage space for the second unit was moved into the interior setback. So assuming that the preliminary approval is legally void, before a project can be submitted for final approval, it must first have a design review approved. And because this project does not, and since that was not on today's agenda, that cannot be given today. Notification must be given that a design review is going before the ABR. By falsely stating on the agenda that only a final review was needed, members of the public have been misled into not coming today to oppose the design review. Now, I do want to say I believe Heidi Ferguson and all homeowners have the right to build on and improve on their properties. However, we live in a dense city on small lots, so we all need to be respectful of the city's guidelines and rules and not blatantly disrespect the charm of the neighborhood and the character of Santa Barbara. The design plans for a metal-clad industrial modern style building is not compatible with our charming residential neighborhood in architectural style, bulk, scale, colors, or materials. The plans fail to follow the ABR guidelines and the municipal code in regards to neighborhood compatibility. Also, neighbors have not been notified by the city that the original preliminary and final approvals were not legal and that they have been declared void. Simple fairness and due process requires new notice that the project is starting over. Even the city's website information regarding the parcel falsely states that the project has already had final approval, and that seems misleading at best. Now, many opposed, of course, are not here today because they were not given notification, but as a reminder that 40 close neighbors living very close to this project signed a petition opposing the project, and many neighbors and other residents throughout the city have written letters in opposition to you and to City Council. There was also a meeting yesterday from the Upper West Side Neighborhood Watch organization. They pulled together a special meeting, and someone's going to be here from there to talk about that. But they are definitely opposed to this project as well due to it not being compatible, and someone here will talk about that. So I just ask that you please consider all of our voices and do what's right for the neighborhood and the whole city, and not just what's best for one homeowner or one architect, even if that architect is on this Architectural Board of Review. Given the fact that 2 ABR members have been hired by the applicant, has raised particular concern by some as to why this project is not complying with the ABR guidelines and the municipal code. A resident who opposes this project and couldn't be here today brought to my attention that the required private storage space for the second unit is not in compliance with the municipal code for 2 reasons. First, part of it encroaches into the interior setback by 3 feet. In order to do that, I've been told the project would need yet another modification. Also, part of it extends into the garage area for the main house, which I'm told also is unacceptable by the city code. And so I would hope that this issue would be studied and resolved before any approval is given. It seems everyone, including the architect, agree that this modern industrial style is not currently in the neighborhood, but that some think it's okay to introduce this very different style. However, the ABR guidelines specifically state that there should be neighborhood compatibility and that structures should present a harmonious character to not clash with the surrounding area. This design does clash with existing architectural styles of the neighborhood in both style and materials. And according to the municipal code, the following questions shall be considered by the ABR when reviewing a project. Quote, is the design of the project compatible with the desirable architectural qualities and characteristics which are distinctive of Santa Barbara and of the particular neighborhood surrounding the project, unquote. And clearly the answer is no. There may be some neighborhoods where this style might be compatible, but not in the older, charming neighborhoods. If Heidi Ferguson, the applicant, would like to change the architectural character of our neighborhood, and you approve this modern industrial architecture in quaint old neighborhoods in Santa Barbara, then I believe this is a sad, very sad turn for Santa Barbara. And this is probably a decision that City Council should take a more serious look at. The notoriety of this project at 903 West Mission Street could and maybe should be the turning point that prompts the city to require R2 lots to follow the neighborhood preservation ordinance, just like single-family homes on R1 lots. Now, if I understood correctly, I think he was saying that and maybe somebody can answer this for me, that some of the back of the second unit is going to be wood instead of metal. Can somebody clarify
Yes.
that?
This,
So it won't have metal siding on the back side of that?
the elevation that faces your property, at the last go-around, had a metal siding on it, and it's been removed,
Okay.
and
Well,
it's been
that's good.
replaced with wood siding, which
And
is
I certainly appreciate that.
much softer.
But I would still say that my understanding, unless you correct me on this, there is still metal siding on which is great for me, the wood, because that faces my property, but unfortunately for the neighborhood, they don't see that. They see the metal siding, which will be the part that is against Gillespie Street. So it still looks very industrial and modern. So I would just strongly urge you not to approve this architectural style. But if you do, then I would ask you to consider requiring the applicant to change the materials on the Gillespie side and get rid of the metal siding and try to make the materials to be more compatible with the neighborhood and the existing structure. If the modern design had an exterior of stucco or painted wood instead of metal siding, then at least one aspect of it, the materials, would be more compatible. And it would be less industrial looking, and it would not stand out as much like a sore thumb as it will if it proceeds with the metal siding and metal roofing. And as far as scale, I just want to say the three-car garage, I know they claim on their front of their plans that you need 3 covered spaces, which according to the municipal code, you do not need 3 covered spaces. You need 3 spaces. 2 can be covered, and 1 doesn't need to be covered. And I just want to say that 3-car garage is out of character for our neighborhood on a small 5,000 square foot lot, and that's the objection to scale and bulk is now this project is one big building that goes from the front setback to all the way to 3 feet from the back setback or the interior setback. So it is a pretty big, bulky project for a small, at best, 5,000 square foot lot.
Okay. Could you try to wrap it up?
Yes. So that's all. I just want to thank you for considering the neighborhood's concerns and the information that I've given you today.
Okay.
And I will just hand you, these are kind of the bullet points of what I talked about if you want to go through any of that.
Pass this down.
And we do have the petition of the neighbors, of all the close neighbors that have signed this, if you'd like to see that.
Oh,
Or
would
I
like
can
to
put
keep
it
it
with
on
you.
record?
Put it on record.
It'd be good.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So I have Sue Young followed by Diane Soto.
My name is Sue Young, and I'm Heidi's friend. I walked with her to talk to her neighbors about Heidi's project. Heidi showed everyone the architectural plans, listened to their responses, and answered any questions they had. Overwhelmingly, 76 residents signed their name and address to support the project. 76. The predominant comments were, "Wow, that's really nice, can't wait to see it, and we'd like a tour once it's built. Thank you for putting money into our neighborhood. That's so nice of you to show us in advance the design. Of course, I support your building." The only question asked repeatedly is, if it's your property, why do you need to ask people for signature? Heidi replied that there is an opposition for the project. They all wanted to know what it was, to which she answered, a concern that the design of the house is not compatible with the neighborhood. It ruffled everybody. They asked to see the design again and then followed with a comment along the lines of, "You're kidding, give me the pen." One particular resident who Pam Brandon had approached last year said, "We were offended by what she had to say, so we asked her to leave. We didn't know that she lived there. We thought it was just a rental. And of course, we support your project, Heidi." As a community member and a citizen of the United States, I am, as well as everyone who are here in America, bound by local, state, and federal laws, ordinance, and regulations. Heidi has absolutely and exceptionally followed every step of this process as required, and she has a right to renovate her house. And lastly, the fact is where she lives, the west side, is not under historical preservation. So that's it.
Thanks very much. Diane Soto, followed by Wayne Dorfman.
Good afternoon. My name is Diane Soto, and I would like to read this letter from the Upper West Side neighborhood. Dear ABR members, the Upper West Side Neighborhood Watch, serving approximately 250 homes, is opposed to the project for 903 West Mission Street. We have discussed the project at a meeting, and we agree that these design plans are not compatible with our neighborhood in bulk, scale, style, and materials. As a West Side organization, we take pride in our neighborhood. By banding together, we create unity that helps the Upper West Side remain an enjoyable and safe place to live. Our organization has succeeded in working to improve issues related to safety, schools, public works, and more. The proposed plans on this highly visible corner lot are out of character with the craftsman and California cottage style and motif which dominates the area and contributes to its charm and neighborhood ambiance. Retention of theme and character are critical. A stark departure from there is at the expense of those who have invested their money and resources of a lifetime into the area. We request that you listen to the neighborhood's opposition and not approve these design plans. However, if you do approve a modern architectural style, we ask you to require the exterior to be materials of colors that fit in with our neighborhood. Metal siding and metal roof will detract from our neighborhood's charm. If the exterior materials were stucco or painted wood, then the modern design would look less industrial. Thank you. And I have some street captains' signatures on here, and I have some copies of the letter if you guys want these.
Yeah, it would be good to have it on record.
Just pass them out to everybody, or?
If you can leave it with staff, it'd be great.
I wasn't invited to that meeting. Plans weren't, I wasn't invited to give my opinion to that meeting. I live in the neighborhood.
That's it?
Okay. So I have Wayne Dorfman now, followed by Russell Clay Ruiz. Wayne Dorfman? Oh, sorry.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity. As a neighbor across the street from this property, I was very curious about the lack of material available to me about this project, and due to the fact that Pam Brandon had informed me about this issue and had given me information, I'd written this letter and had it forwarded to the members of this board, and I'll just reiterate what I had written. I wanted to give my opinion of the construction materials proposed of this project on the residence project of 903 West Mission. This project is not compatible with the neighborhood for the home on 903 West Mission. The proposed plans include a dark gray metal siding added to the sides of an existing stucco house. The front would remain stucco. The roof of the existing house will also get a gray metal roofing. The three-car garage they are adding will be stucco, and the second unit on top of the three-car garage will be metal siding and a flat metal roof. It is modern industrial style architecture. It is believed this not only bad for our neighborhood, but will set a bad precedent for the entire neighborhood city if this gets approved. The dwelling types of this neighborhood is from 100 to 30 years old. We do not currently have any structures with this type of constructional materials anywhere. With only moderate modifications to any homes in this neighborhood, these homes remain of a Santa Barbara beach cottage type of homes. There are no homes with this type of industrial style of construction in any combination of materials. The proposed structural size additions are not the issue as long as they conform to the existing zoning laws we are all mandated to conform to. The objection is the dysfunctional combination of materials that will be used to complete this project. The existing construction is a stucco home. The combination of newer types of materials and finish with the material that is 50 years old is not acceptable to the residents of this neighborhood. We have said this before, but I want to make sure it is clear that I support in being able to build something as long as they maintain the existing eclectic systems that are in place. What I oppose is the specifics of this plan. We live in such tight quarters that we should be all respectful of each other. It may be more affordable for this type of building material, but it will affect us all in our enjoyment of living in this neighborhood. Having to look at metallic painted metal siding and roof, and it could affect our property values if cheaper and less attractive building gets built that detract from our charming neighborhood. I apologize for my dysfunctional reading, but this is something I don't usually do. I appreciate the review process of the ABR board for the modification of this property. The review process that is in place and the responsibilities of this board should be continued and respect the majority collective ownership of and taxpayers, and to maintain the existing eclectic designs to the additions of this dwelling. And more importantly, it's very often that somebody tries to modify the residents in our neighborhoods. And none of us are opposed to that. It's just important that they kind of maintain the architectural style of the neighborhood. We live in a very quaint, eclectic, compact society, and to build something that's industrial is way out of character of what we have in our neighborhood, and I think would really detract from the charm that we have in our neighborhood. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you. Russell Clay Ruiz, followed by Kellum DeForest.
Distinguished members of the board and the architect, I appreciate the tremendous amount of work you've done in designing this structure, and I know how much artistic endeavor there is in that. But what concerns me, my parents lived on the west side since the 1920s. In 1961 or 2, they leveled my father's house to put the Mitchell-Torrena Street overpass in, and it was just condemned and taken down. And as you know, there was a street called Rancheria Street that disappeared under the freeway. Whole neighborhood disappeared. And I think now what we're seeing is the erosion of our Laurel and Hardy Spanish-style neighborhood completely, where we are going into this new phase where these different architectural statements are being approved and the continuity of our neighborhood is being destroyed. We're very proud of our Harding School West Side neighborhood, and when I used to go to Harding School on my bicycle, I remembered all the wonderful little 2-bedroom homes with flat roofs or Spanish tile on them, and I mean, it should have been a national monument the way the neighborhood looked back in President Kennedy's time. And now you look at the place now, and it's becoming a hodgepodge of 2 stories, building to the hilt, jamming things way up against the sidewalks. You know, the green area is disappearing, and the whole character of our neighborhood is changing to the point where you don't even recognize it anymore when you walk around it, because these projects are going in, the views of the mountains are totally disappearing. And my mother often described the tornado that went down Mission Street in 1921, and it tore off all the roofs of the houses and the barns. So I guess down the road, whether you have a tile roof or not, you all end up in the same boat. But I think it's just unfortunate that this hodgepodge of structures is going in, and I do not think it's right that the architects make a statement at the expense of the neighborhood. And I think Prince Charles was talking about this in England over and over and over about what was happening in London and in the major cities of England, where they'll have a beautiful Victorian building or some early structure, and then next door to it they put like something that looks like Kmart or Walmart. and it's just not in keeping with the building. So I do hope that you will consider the fact that we are proud of our neighborhood, and it's just a shame to see what's happening to our neighborhood. It doesn't matter whether it's R1, R2, R3, and it's just density, and we're looking more and more like Isla Vista and Santa Monica by the hour. And I know many people have moved up here from the big city, but it's unfortunate they just cannot leave our town alone. They have to disrupt it and change it. And believe me, if you have to live in these neighborhoods with these hodgepodge designs,
Okay, can you wrap it up?
you may understand why so many of our neighbors are moving away.
Thank you. Killam DeForest?
Good afternoon. As you can see or hear, the problem is neighborhood compatibility. And as you probably know, the city council was split on approving the denial of the appeal and did not address the industrial metal addition in a neighborhood of homes built in the 20s and 30s. The city council was mainly concerned with procedure, not with style, and that's probably it is your commission that is charged with preserving Santa Barbara's unique architectural heritage. It is obvious that this industrial style building or addition is not suitable for this neighborhood. Industrial style encourages industrial style encourages more metal buildings and could turn the neighborhood into a factory area more suitable for property zoned for manufacturing. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, with that, I'll close the public comment section.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. With regard to some public comment letters,
Okay, Tony, go ahead.
we received 9 letters today in support of the project that we forwarded to the members of the ABR, so I'm assuming you all saw those.
Yes.
And we also got a letter in opposition from Mr. Dorfman, who just spoke. And I'd also like to remind you that 2 weeks ago, before the meeting, 2 weeks ago, we received public comment letters that we passed forward to you. Of course, 2 weeks ago, the project was postponed. It wasn't heard. But as a reminder, those letters from 2 weeks ago in opposition were from Christine Cunningham and Bernie Bernstein, Kenneth Barris, and Pam Brandon.
Thanks very much. Okay, I'd like to close public comment now and bring it back to staff. Kelly, you had anything that you wanted to add? And if not, I wonder if you could speak to the 4 items that Pam Brandon brought in her little...
Can you itemize those items for me?
The first one was notice for this meeting is not adequate.
Okay.
The other was private storage space for the accessory dwelling unit does not comply with the municipal code. The third was the design plans are not compatible, with our neighborhood in bulk scale, style and materials. We'll address that.
Good.
And the first 2, that'll be fine with us.
I would just, I prepared a memo today as an explanatory tool for you.
Yep.
This process, we've actually, this project, as you know, went to ABR on August 23rd and received a project design review approval. Subsequently, the adjacent neighbor at 905 West Mission appealed the project. The appeal was denied by council on October 19th, and the project returned to this board for final. At that meeting, the opponent, Ms. Pam Brandon, pointed out to staff that it looked like there was a portion of the second story that encroached into the required open yard. And at that time, in reviewing the minutes from the meeting, it looked like the ABR kind of looked at it, and there is a section in the ordinance that allows overhangs as long as they're 7 feet above the finished grade, and unfortunately, that doesn't apply in the R2 zone. So there was some confusion, and with that understanding, the ABR went ahead and gave this project final approval, and then subsequently, we reviewed the plans and realized that it was a mistake, and we had missed a modification. So we directed the applicant immediately to redesign the project and eliminate that cantilever. And in our panic-stricken mode, I hate to use those words, but we realized we had missed a mod after months of review, which was not fair to the opponent, not fair to the applicant, not fair to you guys as the board. Our immediate reaction was to withdraw the project designer approval and the final approval. And then once staff reviewed the council hearing, we realized that the council did review that area of the cantilever and didn't have any problems with the cantilever. They just specifically asked that the applicant reduce it. Well, it's eliminated at this point. It's not even cantilevering anymore. The project has been reduced from what was given a project design approval and what council saw. So we determined that it was not necessary to revise or to revoke the project design approval. But we did still revoke the final approval so that the applicant didn't pursue the project with a potential violation. So at this time, staff has directed, and I would just add that the applicant had no part in this decision. They were just as surprised as everybody else. We reviewed it in-house of what the best process was for everyone, what was fair, what was the most fair for everybody. And at this time, the applicant has been directed by staff to request a final approval that would be consistent with the project design approval and the plans that received approval by City Council on October 19th. And then in reference to the comments from Ms. Pam Brandon, we only notice projects, as you probably are familiar, when it's the first design review approval. We don't notice a project every time it comes back to design review. Anybody can ask to be added as an interested party, and they will receive a courtesy notice. So that there was no misnoticing done. And also the storage was reviewed by staff, and storage can be placed in the garage as long as it's above, I think it's 4 feet. I can give you the exact dimensions if you want. So that is not a violation at all. It's often done in garages, so it doesn't encroach into the minimum dimensions of 20 by 20.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly. With that, I'll bring back to the board for questions. Keith?
This is for staff, Kelly. There's storage shown on the site plan. I guess it would be on the southern yard. So is that also complying with all the zoning requirements? Well, you tell me.
Let's see. So, no, this was always here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that storage on the ground floor here is not in the setback,
No.
and so it's allowed?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The storage I think she's referring to is in the garage here.
Okay, question for the applicant. On your site fencing, can you describe that material? Is that?
Which one are you pointing to?
Well, I'm just looking here,
So that's an interior fence that actually sets up the division between the neighboring property and
right.
the subject property, and then there's a smaller, kind of more decorative fence that.
But what's the
street.
material there? Is it the same as the siding, or is it different?
That's the intention, yeah. Wood stain siding matching the siding that's being used on the house. Probably be more of a rough sawn version of it.
But
yeah.
horizontal like the?
No, not necessarily. That's just more of a traditional wood vertical orientation.
Okay, and then were there any other locations where the wood siding was added from the previous plans that ABR saw besides that rear second floor?
No, the only addition is what we showed there, the former cantilever location.
No more questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. John?
Can you just describe one more time, what was the distance that you moved forward at the garage face Just what was that dimension? You moved it slightly forward, I think.
You mean the second story
Yeah.
unit towards the street?
In order to remove the cantilever, you moved it a
It
little bit.
wasn't
towards-
exactly the same number as we moved the cantilever. 'cause
Oh, it didn't move the face of the building. It just affected the planter slightly.
This wall right here moved up slightly. And do you remember the number of inches and feet that moved?
It was about a foot.
Yeah.
Garage and then just a few inches on the living room wall. But
This wall.
This moved a bit. We couldn't come
But the
out.
deck, you didn't come out beyond this existing deck.
We're limited again by the 6-foot clear dimension that we have to maintain for the private outdoor living space on this. We don't have that condition here. We're limited in this case by the front yard setback for the second story.
So where was the front
We're
of the
actually
structure
not quite on
before?
that.
The front of the structure
It's
itself?
back here.
The-
Right here, about a foot back.
About a foot back. You moved
Yeah.
it, and then this was always the same? The deck?
This isn't. Yeah, that has not changed.
That has not changed. And this changed slightly, but only into the deck and not closer to the street.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then we lost some dimension along the entire back here to
Right,
accommodate
I knew
that
that
change,
part.
which I think is about a foot 9 inches.
And I guess the only question is, the west side is not a designated historic neighborhood yet, or is it even being studied to be? Or right now, it's not a designated historic neighborhood such as the bungalow
Correct.
Haven is. Okay.
That's correct.
And the council sent the project back one more time because of looking at ways to reduce the cantilever on the interior yard facing the neighbor, to lower the 2-story as much as possible. And there was one more thing.
The privacy window.
And the privacy window.
And they didn't send it back. It had to return for
It had to
final.
return
So-
back, so that's why it came back. There was no mention in the motion about restudying the style of the building in the
Not
motion.
It was discussed at the ABR, at the council meeting, but it was not included in the motion.
Okay.
Discussed
No more questions.
extensively.
Gary?
I'll bring up a question to staff. This has to do with neighborhood compatibility. Although it is not a historic neighborhood, is it within the ABR guidelines that structures need to be designed towards structures of merit in the neighborhood? Is that within the guidelines, the structure of merit, neighboring structures of merit? What I'm getting at is that normally when we talk about structures and we talk about neighborhood compatibilities and what direction to look to build for, as far as I know, as the guidelines state that if there are structures of merit in the neighborhood, you're to build towards those rather than away from it. And the only exception of those structures, the only exception towards that architecture would be exceptional architecture. I believe that is in the guidelines.
I'm not aware of any guidelines like that. I know there's some discussion in the general plan discussions currently about having buffers around landmarks and that kind of thing, but I don't think anything like that's in place right now.
Yeah, that's it. Paul, no questions? Okay, I don't have any questions. The others asked the questions I had. Bring them back for comments. Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think if we start with the city council resolution, I think it's clear that the applicants responded to the 3 charges that they were given. They've lowered the height. Now they've eliminated the cantilever, and they've defined the window facing the neighbor as fixed as far as future modifications. So I think the applicants responded to those favorably. With regard to mass, bulk, and scale, I don't think that has been an issue with the ABR. I think even the board members that were opposed to the architectural style felt that the mass, bulk, and scale was compatible with the neighborhood, and that's my opinion. With regard to the parking, I think it's more desirable to have 3 garages than have open parking on the site. So that's my thought there. As far as the revised design, I think the addition of the wood on the upper floor to the south is a positive move. I would suggest maybe even taking that idea further, maybe to the second floor on the street side, where you have that one recessed plane here. So you have the wood siding here kind of capped, and you might consider bringing it here, and then I think that would be a way to also introduce that kind of warmer material even further to the Gillespie side. So throw that out there. Given some of the comments in the neighborhood, I don't know if the applicant would consider the use of the metal siding on this one-story portion here, perhaps using it more as the roofing material in a similar way here. That's a suggestion. Overall, I think the project's well designed and well detailed, and it's going to have quality materials. So I think it's a good project.
Thank you, Keith. Dawn?
I agree with Keith's comments. No further comments.
Gary?
Well, I've been opposed to this project, and I still am. I do not believe that the materials are compatible with the neighborhood. I do not believe that the roof structures are compatible with the design of the building, and I don't think that this is exceptional architecture. And I do believe that there is something in our guidelines that does point you towards design guidelines towards the compatibility of the neighborhood. And so I will stay with my position, my opposition of this project due to the incompatibility to the neighborhood.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Paul?
I hope to be brief. I'm going to abstain from voting just because I wasn't involved when this was a preliminary, and when I went to City Council and all that kind of review. I believe it's not appropriate for the neighborhood, the design, the material. Size, bulk, and scale, it is a very modest, petite little structure. There's nothing wrong with the size. It's just the way it's dressed. I don't think it's appropriate, but I haven't been involved enough in the process, so I'll be abstaining, and that's it.
Okay, thanks. I'm in favor of this project, and I'll tell you the reasons why. I think that mass, bulk, and scale, this building falls within the range, and I think that we have heard from each side of this issue that that's not an issue here. And it really comes down to the style and materials. And I have to say that, yes, this building is different and an addition to the neighborhood that you're in. However, this is not a historic neighborhood. And every neighborhood has to have an opportunity to learn, to grow, to be able to be open to new things. That does not mean that everything is appropriate. And that's what this board is for. And as you can see, not every member on the board is in agreement. However, that's why we have more than one member for voting. I think that it's always difficult for something new in a neighborhood that's always had something to be to fit in for all the others who have been used to what was there already. And in that, it's always difficult for them to come in. But I think that with this new design, this is not an aggressive building, in my view. I think it's quite sympathetic to the scale that is in the neighborhood, and I think that with the use of materials like the wood battens, etc., and the picket fence in front, and the scale of the roof and the massing, I think that all has been very successfully done. I mean, I don't think all the neighbors may see it this way, but I personally feel that when something new comes into a neighborhood and it is sensitive to the neighborhood, it also opens for everyone who lives in that neighborhood new opportunities. It may not be in a design that someone can use that particular style, but there are things in this design and in the use of these materials that will now be open to other people in the neighborhood that they never thought of using, that would create great design. It doesn't mean I'm thinking that everyone will go industrial. It just means that you're opening new design ideas to what's there. And if this were a historic district, that's a different matter. It is not a historic district. And if the neighborhood wants to have a historic district, they're free to start a process to go that route. So in any way, I think that this is a good design in my view, and I am in favor of it. So I'm open to having a motion. That could go either way.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask the applicant a question, would you consider the addition of the wood siding in that location?
We might consider that. I'd have to, consult with the owner on that and study it, but I think we're pretty comfortable with what we're presenting.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for final approval as submitted with the following comment. The applicant is encouraged to consider the addition of additional locations for the wood siding.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it necessary to, I'm not asking to modify that, but given where we've been on this, I think we need something definitive. I hate to see this left with any, there's, we're not sure.
You're asking for up or down on addressing the final.
It just raises another question that may get addressed. I don't know if we're going to get appealed again here, so I'm a little concerned about leaving
Maybe we can answer
something on the
now.
table.
If you're not going to, would you not consider the additional wood siding as suggested?
Before he answers that question, I would just to rally on the side of the applicant and the architect. I mean, it's a death by 1,000 little pinpricks. The design is in front of us the way that they would like it to be. It is not our role here to impose our design ideas and to that's. I think it should be a vote up and down based upon what's in front of us
It
today.
is our role if we feel that, excuse me for interrupting, but it
That's
is our
right.
role if we feel it's important enough. I think that what Keith was getting at was that he was trying to feel it out. The owner is here.
Yeah, we appreciate that too. I'm not implying that you're messing around with that.
I just say you can sense already. I mean, you know already this is a very sensitive project, and it's not sensitive only to the members of the public, but it is very sensitive to the board members, and they walk a tight line, and they are not only trying to be good for the neighborhood, they're trying to be good to the applicant. And what you are experiencing right here now is a member who is trying to tell you or indicate to you where his sensitivities lie. And you have an option. That's all he's trying to tell you. You have an option which way you'd like to go. And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I understand that, and I appreciate the additional input, and I think it really lies with the owner to decide whether she wants to keep moving forward. So if you're willing to look at it and study it, then I think we should.
But I think what Josh is saying is it's easier if I can look at it and consider it without it being written down to be analyzed and taken to city council next time by somebody that just doesn't want my house built.
So
That's
perhaps we're not continuing it. Perhaps we could come back on consent if we decided that was an issue we wanted to further pursue.
Or you can make a contingency.
I'm just concerned about it being.
Obviously, if you do want to make a change like that, you would come back for a review after final, and probably consent would be appropriate. So I would be fine with that. So under discussion, I'd be willing to. You've heard what I've had to say. To have final approval as submitted.
I'll continue to second my motion, but also strongly suggest that the applicant, in the case of this being so sensitive, to look at that.
So what's the motion before us now? Is it final approval as submitted. Right? As submitted. And you seconded. Okay, under discussion, any other items? No? So all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? 1. Those abstention? 1. So we have 3 in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, that brings us to the second item of the evening. And we're half an hour behind. So our second item is 512 Bath Street. Okay. Sorry. The second item of the evening is 512 Bath Street. This was April 2nd, 2011. While you set up, I'm going to read the minutes for the board members. Study and confirm the Creeks Division, with the Creeks Division, the feasibility of outdoor seating. Oh yeah, sorry, I'll start that again. Motion from the last meeting. Study and confirm with Creeks Division the feasibility of outdoor seating outside of the rec room area. Study additional opportunities to reduce the hardscape and increase the landscape, including vine pockets wherever possible. Some board members are concerned with the requested modification for stairs in the required front yard. And 4, resolve the railing extensions on the stairways to be more compatible with the architecture. So, and this, this is for the final review hearing. Yes, you're up.
So I'm Bonnie Sangster from Pikert Group Architects.
And I'm David Black, landscape architect.
And actually, do you want to skip? Could address the first comment. We did meet with Creeks and have the following.
Skip Szymanski with the Housing Authority, City of Santa Barbara. We met with Urban Creeks and we met with the City Creeks Department, and both parties indicated that it was their understanding that the areas designated, the creek side and the indented areas that we added, that would all be passive use, and it's their understanding and desire not to have any seating or any active areas for human interaction.
Okay, that's first item.
Secondly, site plan, we actually two things at once. We did appreciate the comments about increasing planter areas, and previously we had the walkway combined against the arcade here and curving out, and so we've actually narrowed that concrete down to what the minimum walkway would be as a 4-foot walkway, and substantial planting down the middle. And we had also previously had the stair encroaching in the front yard setback, and we agreed that we'd rather put it behind the setback, and this U-shaped stair works in this case to our liking so much that we kept it symmetric, and instead of having a landing at this south stair, we matched it in a similar fashion and increased the planting on both sides in front of those stairs. And on this south side also got vine pockets. It's a little bit different because of just the way the flow goes, kind of traveling straight to the mailboxes, and also the bicycle parking takes up space there. Otherwise, these areas have not changed.
Okay.
And the landscaping, maybe.
Sorry, do we have railing extension that we would still have to address?
Yeah.
Do you want to show detail?
Well, I thought the landscape.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's just be compatible with that.
So that'd be part of it?
Okay. So, as Bonnie indicated, the landscape area has increased here with the stair being drawn back, and per some comments that we had from the last meeting, we've added another tree at this location as well as here. There was some concern about whether or not there'd be enough buffering of the stairway. So, and then we've taken advantage, obviously, of the increase in planting along here with vines on the posts here. So pretty much we have a sort of a common theme of vines being grown up on the posts throughout the project, all the way out to the creek, where we've got a native clematis vine that we felt would be compatible with the riparian palette that we have back there. So,
Just to follow through with revisions in the set, this is just the enlarged hardscape dimensioning and so forth of the front area that's pretty generally changed. And the elevation that corresponds is just the front elevation on the third sheet, top right. So you see the new stairway from the front. And then just to pick up more consistent detailing, the stair, this is stair 1, the north stair that's now the U-shaped stair, just a detail of the U and the two elevations as seen from the front and from the side as you go along the walkway. Otherwise, no changes on the sheet. And finally, the handrail extension, we explored a lot of different configurations, including going to a square tube and also going to the ground, and we just kept coming back to the simpler loop, but we did try to fashion it in a little nicer looking profile. This is what you saw previously, so we've pulled it out a little bit, made it a little bit more oblong, and we've added the brackets. And just as an example of how we feel that that's consistent with the craftsman style, there's pictures from the Laguna Court bungalow project with something similar. It's just a 1.5-inch round handrail and a basic bracket. And we would propose powder coating it to match the stucco color. This is the elevation that detail is based off of. The colors are not quite right here, but it would just be consistent with the building, we think. Okay. And that's all we have.
Okay. Thanks very much. Okay. With that, any public comment? No? No public comment? So we someone approaching? Late public comment? Do you have a public comment? Would you like to comment on the project? Please. Yep. So we have one public comment speaker, Eddie Harris. Please proceed, Eddie.
My name is Eddie Harris. I'm with Santa Barbara Urban Creeks Council. And we've been involved in this project for some time, and want to just, first of all, kind of reiterate or reconfirm what Skip mentioned to you about the conditions here when we did meet with the Housing Authority, with the City Creeks Division, we felt that it was important to note that the conditions here, when the Army Corps project is built, it will not leave a lot of space there that will lend itself to use as a place for human interaction, and so we're asking that we limit any use of that space to maybe some benches where it would be appropriate next to the building. And also, along with this, it's important to look at the elevated spaces, such as the deck. I believe it's on the 3rd story facing the creek, which could be a very useful gathering place or a place for people to enjoy that creekside view and to be able to experience the creek. I think if you're going to look for a space in the project for viewing and for use as an observation platform, that would be ideal and make sure it's designed with the trees in mind, so that you create an elevated platform within the trees so that there's a view of the creek, and also the mountain views will be visible from that location. So that's probably, I think, a very important thing to consider in this project. That's really the most, I think, the central issue I wanted to bring up with you today. I wish that this project would have really taken on a planning focus on the creekside elements right from the beginning. I think it would be a much better project than what you have here. But this project does provide some element of a vegetated creekside buffer, and it should be protected as such. And so I'll just leave my comments to that.
Okay, thanks very much. So with that, I'll close public comment, bring back to staff. Do we have any additional things for staff? None from staff, so bring back to the board for questions. Clay, you?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Keith?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the gentleman from the Creeks. Is there communication happening between you and planning so that when the applications are coming through, they're bordering on creeks, that you guys are involved from the get-go? Because just last meeting here, we had another fairly significant project that's bordering on a creek, and it seemed like we were headed for the same kind of twilight zone of what the requirements are. So I'm just wondering how that interaction works.
Ideally, we do appreciate being notified, and we want to be involved. There are a number of real critical benefits that are derived through proper management of the creeks, and sometimes we're not notified. Sometimes that communication doesn't happen.
Process so that you guys are
well, there is a formal process, but maybe it's not perfect and it doesn't always work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Planning staff does work with the Creeks Division, not I don't know how the Urban Creeks Council gets involved, but as part of preliminary zoning plan check, if we have a project adjacent to a creek, we will show it to the Creeks Division.
I see. Okay. Thanks, Tony. Are there any other questions, Keith? Dawn, questions?
No questions.
Gary? No questions. Paul? Chris? I don't have any questions either. Okay, that brings us back to the board for comments. And so Clay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the applicants responded to the comments. I'm still not a huge favor of the railing detail, but it's not a deal breaker for me.
That's it? Keith?
Nothing more to
Don? Gary?
I'm just going to state my opinion on this project. I think that the Housing Authority has some great projects in town, and there's been some, they're one of the best maintained properties, and they really have a great record of buildings in town. I think that this project is overdeveloped, and I've kind of made that statement all the way through. So I'm going to be opposing this project on mass bulk and scale reasons. I believe it's too far forward, and it just never got there for me. So I will be opposing the project today.
Thanks, Gary. Paul?
I won't be opposing the project. I agree with what Gary was saying. It went to Planning Commission. Planning Commission said they were okay with the size, bulk, and scale, and the landscaping and the setbacks. So they're a higher body than I or us, so I'm fine with giving it approval, but I do think it's over-designed, overbuilt.
Thanks, Paul. Chris?
I too would echo those comments, but I will be supporting the project, and I think the landscaping looks really good. There's only one thing I was going to say, and that's, we requested that additional planting be put in those areas between the buildings, and the addition of vines also, and I just don't want to overdo it, because I know those areas are not going to get a whole lot of light. So I wouldn't be opposed if you wanted to take one or two of those vines out of these areas, so it doesn't have to all be consistent throughout. You understand? But that's it. Other than that, I think it looks good.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you. I am somewhat, I think, again, like the Housing Authority has a lot of great projects, and they do a wonderful job. And, there are projects that they've done around town that I just absolutely think they've done an excellent job. I feel that this project, and it has been reinforced for me through the process, that this is an over-design for this lot. I think it's too large in mass bulk and scale, and it shows where we're trying to squeeze in little areas in the creek, and we're pushing up on the front with the steps that's now been replaced. But I think these things have eroded the overall quality of it, and it just shows that with such little room to maneuver, I think that this project doesn't have enough breathing room. Having said that, I still think it's a great project. I think, I'm happy to see it in the city, and I'm happy that the Housing Authority has brought it before the board and is trying to develop it. I think you have support on the board, but I think it's overdeveloped, while I think it's still a great project. Okay, I will open the board for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll move for final approval as submitted.
Thanks a lot, Keith. Do I have a second? Second by Chris. And under discussion, any items? And all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And all those against, please say. There's 2. So motion passes. We have 4 for, and 2 against. Is that it? Correct? Did you abstain or? No, 4. Okay, 5 for and 2 against. Okay, thanks very much. I think that works well. I knew it was going to go. Yeah.
I need to leave one.
So that brings us to the third item of the evening. 3761 State Street. 3761 State Street. That's carnal androlitis. For final review. Going once for final. Going twice for final.
Yeah. They actually were here. I remember seeing her step in with some board.
Okay. Okay, we'll just take a short 5-minute adjournment, and We hope to be back with the applicant in a short while. Thank you. 3761 State Street. Thank you. And this was last heard in April 4th of this year. And the motion was project design approval and continued indefinitely to full board with the following comments. Study the two smaller entries on either side of the archways, provide greater hierarchy between the openings, introduce additional landscape material on the north facade, study the intersection between the shed roof and trellis at west end of north facade. Okay, and you're up.
Yes, I'm Deborah English, DL English Design, representing Whole Foods. I'm flying solo today while my partners are out of the country or elsewhere engaged. Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. I thought Catherine went to Cabo, and I'm thinking, I wish I was there. Anyway, we took some steps to equalize and to resolve the issues regarding the small openings by doing the following: is that we bolstered up the outside. They were different sizes, and so we evened those two columns as they came down to the ground, and then we added a simple arch detail with an edge, and you can't really see it in that little drawing, but you can see it right there, that we a small detail on the top of it on both sides to kind of equalize it and create that hierarchy that I think that you were looking for. In addition to that, we resolved, or we hope to have resolved, the roof issue, the intersection of the trellis and the overhang, by removing the cross members that went across the top of the trellis so that they did not project and kind of hang over into that area. So all we have now would be the piece against the wall and then the beam that intersects between the two columns. So that, hopefully that is an adequate resolution of that issue. You can see sections of those in the two sections on A1.2. So this beam simply mounts it against there, and there are no pieces that now, no cross pieces. Regarding the landscaping, we looked at it with Whole Foods, and they asked that if the plants and the produce and all of those sorts of products that are green and colorful can be taken into account for the landscaping, because the area up here is so tight already. It's such a narrow area that they would prefer not to have to carve out some planters in order to be able to put some additional landscaping, and would like to ask that you would consider those other things that they do bring out into the marketplace or out into the street be considered as the greenery and the life that you're looking for. And that was their message to me.
On the introduction of additional landscape material?
Yes, yes. They asked that that be considered, and if in lieu of actual plantings, because they do bring considerable amount of fruits and vegetables and plants out into this area.
Okay.
And we're not taking any landscaping away. It's not shown specifically here on this illustration, but we're not taking anything away that wasn't approved in the first place, and we're not removing from the initial approval.
Okay. But generally, I mean, I'll save it for comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, are you finished?
Yes, I did bring, there was a request to bring the original material board. So what we brought what was initially recommended, and then just, it's kind of hard to put that stuff on the board, but just to reiterate that we're really looking to simply replicate what was originally approved and not bring any new stone or new material or new colors into the project.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, then, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Clay? There's no one for public comment, so.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple minor questions.
Yes.
What's the roof pitch on this new gable end on the front?
The degree of?
Yeah, do you know? It's
I
like,
don't know.
And then my next question is this area to the right of the entry on the rendering, where there's a new takeout window, is this area, is that where they pull out vegetables and things like that? Is that
No,
what
they,
you're talking about?
they pull it out in the front, right in the front area, right in here.
You can just
So
leave
they-
it down and point to it.
okay.
I can see.
Okay.
Okay. Those are my only questions.
Okay, thanks. Keith?
No questions.
John?
No questions.
Gary? Paul? Chris? And I have no questions. I'll bring it back for comments. Clay?
Still on. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think this has definitely progressed nicely compared to the last time we saw it. I'm feeling pretty comfortable with the direction. I'd like to hear maybe from the other board members about the pitch of that gable because it looks a little flat to me, but that could just be my own thinking of it. I think that's about all I got.
Okay, thanks. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To address Clay's thoughts on the roof pitch, I think the double-edged sword there is having a steeper pitch just makes it more massive, so it's kind of, I'm sort of okay with where it's at. I think the project's ready for final upon submittal of construction details.
Thanks, Keith. John?
I have to abstain from this project because I didn't review the audio from the last meeting and I was absent. Tony, am I allowed to comment even though I'm going to be abstaining? Because I saw this the first time and I didn't see it the last time that it was brought in, and I think that it's definitely better than the first submittal that was brought in, but I'm just, it's probably a good thing that I'm not abstaining because I don't think that the massing is quite right, the proportion of the building with the arches, the height, and then with the pitch and how everything's coming together. I don't think it's quite there yet, but I'll still be abstaining.
Okay. Gary? No comments? No comments?
I have one comment. I'll voice it, and if other board members kind of chime in, then maybe we can go with it. And if other board members are fine with the way it's designed, then we'll let it be. The concern that I have is the fanciness. If we go to the front cover sheet of the little tiny arches. I know this was added to add a little bit more interest. Before, the older drawings just had a straight line going across, but now I think it's a little bit too fussy and a little bit too, the detailing is has too much attention to detail when there's such more larger, simpler forms. So I'm just, in my mind, I'm thinking this could just be a simple oval or elliptical arch or something of that nature, but
Just taking out those pieces?
somehow, and then I also noticed that you did bring these, you narrowed these in, made it narrower, but I don't sense that was a concern as much as well either. But other people can chime in, and if they think that maybe this is too narrow now and a little bit wider, and perhaps a different arch. I would actually bring this down and have a little bit more of an arch, but it's a flat, some kind of a elliptical arch. Somehow I think that would be more in keeping and simplistic with the other forms that are happening. But that's the only thing my eye caught.
Thanks, Paul. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think most of the comments have been addressed. As far as the roof pitch, I think I'm with Don on that. I think there's something about the proportions there, and it might be that maybe the roof pitch doesn't have to change, but that whole roof line could just move up another 6 inches to a foot and just give a little bit more distance between the arch where the window is and the roof. So maybe you could play with that just a little bit. but I'm seeing that there's something a little bit strange about that as well. In terms of the greenery in front of the building, I think I'm fine with that. I think Paul brought that up last time, that instead of adding more landscaping, it is dressed up there, at least when they're open, so it does appear to be green. And then something's still bothering me about that transition to the arbor. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm not an architect either, so I will let that one go if nobody else has any comments about it. That's it. Thanks.
Okay. I have to abstain also because I wasn't here. I mean, I could look at I think I'm allowed, if I look at the last drawings, I'm allowed to comment on it. Or you have to? I thought the video is only if it was extensive.
It's really up to your comfort level if you understand the project.
I understand.
For a particularly controversial project, it might be good to review the video and all that, but not
Right.
for everything.
Right. Okay, no, I'm good. Okay, I'm open for a motion. Or should I give my comments? I'll give my comments. Sorry, I hate to be so across uncharted territory with this video and minutes and all that. Yeah, I think that I'm neither here nor there on this little detailing here. I think it could survive with both, but I could see the point that Paul's trying to make. I do think with this, if those are carts that go down there, I do think that if they were a little bit more generous, I think people might be more inclined to go down if there's only like 10 carts at the end and you have to go all the way to the end. So if it's a little narrow, it kind of just makes it seem that more slotted to go down. So I would have tended to lean that way, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. I think all of the little outstanding things to me are not deal breakers. That's pretty well where I fall. Okay, so I'm open to a motion. Did that help?
Does the board feel like there's enough information here for final at board, or do they want to see it consent? I'll make a motion.
Did you say, Keith, that you wanted to see more details, or you would open to seeing more finished?
We don't have construction details. So
Okay.
I feel comfortable giving it final today, but I think it's probably something that can be handled at consent.
Then I'd like to make a motion for an indefinite continuance back to consent with the following comment, that the applicant study the smaller arches to this at the front elevation, look for ways of making them a smidgen wider, and, slightly wider, and to simplify the arch top. And to provide construction detailing, in particular focusing on the transition at the existing trellis to the new roof. And if you've already drawn it, then just bring it to that design review to consent.
And do we have a second? Second. So second by Gary. Under discussion, no one spoke about the landscaping portion of the last minutes, and you did?
He spoke to it, and I actually go to the store occasionally, and they really do dress up the front with a lot of carts on wheels with just harvest time kind of displays.
Having said that, I mean, as an ABR board, I don't think that this is my personal opinion, that we should be making a ruling on what the use of the building is in terms of the tenant, because we are trying to approve this building for multiple tenants, not only yourself. So the day Whole Foods moves out, or if the tenant is lost within 2 months, what we see there is what we approve. So I know that there is sympathy in that regard, but I just want to let you as the applicant know that this is not a norm where we would use things like fruit outside to approve a project.
That makes sense.
So I just want to let you know that.
Well, duly
Okay.
noted.
Okay, our landscape architect has looked at the landscape and he has given his piece, so I'm happy in that regard. Okay, thank you. We have so we have a motion. For all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries. And one abstention. Okay, thank you. So you come to consent board for final with your construction details and address the issues that the motion carried.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, and with that, that brings us to item number 4. And we have 215 Pasatus Lane, Sansom Medical Foundation. And we'll take a short 5-minute recess again until we... Okay. Okay, Dawn, this is yours. Dawn Sherry cheering. So go ahead, go left. Go left with you. I'm sorry. Sorry. I apologize.
We didn't want
in
to change
advance.
plans in midstream.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to bring in a switch hitter.
Perfect.
Okay. So
That might be the wrong terminology to use. I didn't mean it that way.
Tony, do we have plans, or they're bringing their own plans?
Oh, no, those things. I'm going to hand out these so it's easier to see.
While you're doing that, I can read the minutes from the last meeting. The motion was for a 2-week continuance back to the full board with the following comments. Resolve both first floor canopies regarding design and materiality. The second comment was provide more details for the east elevation windows. 3, study the removal of the landscape area between the parking lot and the structure on the south elevation to reduce the amount of hardscape to the greatest extent possible. 4, the board is having difficulty with an approval for a permanent trailer in the location proposed. Provide an alternate solution. 5, accurately show locations of the existing fins on the south elevation. 6, the temporary lab trailer location is acceptable with the condition that the trailer is to be removed prior to final building permit sign-off. 7, provide a preliminary landscape plan. All right. Your name for the record.
Oh, Darcy Hernandez.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go down the list here, if that's okay. In terms of resolving the canopy design materiality, so what we've done is we've brought some more views. Initially, we had already only submitted kind of one view of it. We did kind of look at some of the details related to the canopies. There are 2 canopies, the one that is the drive-on door and the one that is the main entry. There was some concern about the materials, and we reevaluated and looked at it, and because the facility is very institutional looking, and this is a healthcare facility, we are looking to bring some warmth into the facility and kind of rebrand that concept. And so we are asking to stick with the wood. We think that that's a good fit for this building. We have kind of developed the details a little bit more, provided some more views to understand how it will work together, even detailing some of the intersections of how the 2 materials meet so that they're not meeting flush. It looks like it's there's an offset, so they're not 2 different materials kind of meeting together. So we have further detailed and evaluated that, but it's still very preliminary, obviously, but we have had our structural engineers look at it, and everything is sufficient from that standpoint. So,
all right.
any questions about that, or should I move
You know,
on?
why don't you just make your
Sure.
whole presentation and then we'll ask questions afterwards.
That's fine. With regards to the east facade, there had been a suggestion to look at the detailing of these windows, and in looking at the rest of the architecture of the building, we decided to take cues from the existing building and define the side windows to mimic the architecture that was existing, similar to the architecture that's occurring at the front of the new entry. The study of the removal of the landscaping between the parking lot and structure itself, there's a little 11 by 17 plan that shows what we're proposing from landscaping. Originally, there was a concern that the existing grass area, which is located right here in this area, it was often walked across and a tripping hazard. So instead of making that hardscape as we had originally proposed, we are coming back and filling it in with planting so that it's no longer a tripping hazard and folks won't walk across it because it has plantings there. And we have adjusted the parking. We've lost 2 parking spaces, but as you recall, we're over parked, so we can account for the loss of those 2 parking spaces. And we've provided a pedestrian access point from the parking lot to the front of the building. In terms of the board is having difficulty with the permanent trailer, so the MRI trailer. I'm going to go ahead and flip to the site plan. Oops, thank you. Which is located on the second page of your package. I'll fold this over. As you recall, the MRI trailer is located in the back here. We went back and evaluated other alternatives, and really for the function and the clinical needs of this trailer, because of their location of their imaging department here and the ease of access, this is an accessible path of travel that can get patients to and from their existing building. We really feel that this location best serves the needs of the facility. What we have done is looked at providing some screening for that trailer so that, as you recall from the previous photos, there's a lot of vegetation there, but you could visibly see the trailer from the street. And so what we're proposing is that we add in some green screens to cover that trailer. It would be something like along this line where you would have a screen and then the landscaping would fill up around it. Those would be located in the existing planters that are already there on site, so right here and here on the south side and the east side of the trailer. But the trailer would remain in its proposed location. With regards to providing a preliminary landscape plan, we have provided the preliminary landscape plan, which really zooms into the area of scope of work that we're working with, because really it's primarily an entry remodel and then the MRI trailer. I've also provided on the site plan an overall view and aerial of the existing site, which shows the amount of landscaping and existing trees already on site. You can see that just in the corner of the building here, there are some larger trees that are existing, and so it's fairly well vegetated and has a fairly good tree cover existing in terms of the overall site. I think that addressed
Did
this
you
one.
talk about the fins on the south elevation? And
I did not.
That's the only one, I think.
So the fins are existing. How they were shown in the previous drawing is accurate.
So there's 2 locations for them.
There are. So the fins are located out at the pharmacy. The photos from the actual site, you can see that they're harder to see because some of the vegetation has grown up around them. There is vegetation existing in this area, but there are fins located here, and then there are the fins located at this location and this location.
Okay.
And you can see that in the...
All right.
Don't you have the photos of the...
It's the existing photos.
Right.
We had some at 3, I think.
I was looking for something else.
Do you have anything else to add to your presentation?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay. Do we have any public comment for this project, Tony? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak about this project? Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Clay, any questions?
Thanks, Madam Chair. understand how you do it in SketchUp and other programs. But
Sure,
how are
the
you
actual
How do you
material.
think you're going to build it?
Sure. So it's a wood panel system. It's a Trespa or a Parklex product. I don't know if you've seen them around the area on other buildings, but it basically is a panel system that's got a connection point that locks onto like a metal clip, like a cleat. And we would weld, this is actually steel members that run here, and so we've got wide flange beams on the outside and tube steel on the inside. The cleats would then get welded to the tube steel, and then the panels would clip to the outside of the tube steel. We've met with the Parklex rep to confirm that this can really be detailed and worked through, and they're working with us to develop those details.
Making sure I was on. Now, what is that dimension?
I believe it's about 2 feet. I don't know exactly off the top of my head. I apologize.
So you have roughly 2 feet by 8 feet panel.
Yeah, the panels are like in 8-foot or 4-foot increments, correct. So there is, they abut next to each other. They're made for exterior wear.
And that would be the same material here and here on the bottom, on the top of all of those.
Yeah, I mean the top actually would have some sort of coping or flashing on the top, and that would match the color of the wood, but you wouldn't necessarily run them on the top in order to drain properly. But.
And can you remind me again, because I was looking through the floor plans, but it came to questions really rather quickly. Is this the main entrance, or this is just storefront?
That is just storefront.
So the main entrance is actually here.
Sure, so we can flip to the floor plans here. Let me just walk you through those, since it has been a couple weeks. Let's see. So currently this is actually where their existing entry is as well. It is, it's kind of got a wood roof that was temporarily put over that entry there, and so we're proposing to make an actual enclosure and make that a vestibule. But this is the location, so you've got your parking out here, and folks come up here. This is the location, and then this is the drop under for folks that are dropping off. This actually works a little bit better, that you're not parking directly in front of the entry, so that you've got a clear line of sight. Having it positioned here closer to the street gives you better visibility of the main doors also.
And this entrance here is
Existing.
an existing entrance.
It's existing, and it'll be used to access the classroom for after-hours community education.
But the existing system is staying as it is.
Correct. Everything from these sides here, from here to there, basically is existing, and it's really just this corner to this corner that's getting upgraded in the canopy.
Okay, thanks.
Before you ask questions, Keith, I had one to follow up on Clay's. What is that dimension in the horizontal direction? If this one's 24.
I don't know exactly, but I would estimate a wide flange beam has got, like 3 or 4 inches on each side. So if you've got 8 inches, and then you wrap that with a sheathing, and then you put a panel on it, you're going to have like 8 or 10 inches.
Okay. Keith, do you have questions? Chris?
I don't. Okay. I have questions. Sorry. I guess my focus is I see the other board members who are focusing on this, and so I have the same concerns. I think when I hear their comments, I'll know. I think that they have the same concerns, and I think
that they are addressing it. I have a little bit more concern about the MRI trailer, and your presentation is just really well, it has to be there, and we just think it has to be there, and boom, kind of thing. Because what I don't see is that it has to be there, and because it has to be there, addressing that area more than just this green screen. I mean, I think it's really a problem, that particular area, and I think if it has to stay in that area, and there is, it's a hospital and it's this benefit and stuff like that, I think that because of how egregious it is in that condition, I think you need to do a lot more to make that acceptable, in my personal view. I think you have a lot of room here for landscaping to work with. I think you have to develop that whole little area and focus on that as a, within, 30 feet from each side, and look at what can you do to make this thing really, fall into a compatibility, because it's in an area that normally you would not be allowed to build something there. And there are reasons for that,
It's an area that we wouldn't be allowed to build something?
Oh, well, if you had to be building something, there would be things that you would have to do to make it compatible in the neighborhood.
That makes
right?
sense, yes.
And what we're asking is that if you're proposing to put that there, then we're asking you to make it compatible in the neighborhood as opposed to just trying to, just...
Still with the ability to have it mobile.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the concern. There's a lot of leeway given because it's a hospital, it's an MRI unit. I know how these things work, there's costs involved and the whole thing. I'm just trying to make this also good for the neighborhood.
Sure.
And so I just have that concern. But
and I apologize if the presentation came across like, well, it just has to stay here because it has to stay here. There's really good clinical reasons for why that needs to be located there. And accessibility, that site slopes along the back side. There's not a lot of places where you can get a flat walk directly to the trailer, being that
I think we're questioning the fact that there's a trailer there at all. Not that.
Yeah.
That's not a good location.
No, just a trailer.
Yeah.
It's hard to
There's-
talk about a trailer
fair
and
enough.
approving a trailer.
There is
That's
no-
really what his point was, I think.
Fair enough. So there is no existing clinical space in this facility that can accommodate it to be built.
Okay, so my question, we're in the questions phase right now?
We are, and the only reason I'm letting you continue with comments is you're leaving. So
Yes.
otherwise, I
And
would have shut you down.
I
a
know,
long time.
I know. And I appreciate that. But I just ran on a little too long. Here's what my question would be. Have you addressed that area a little bit more? There's a lot more landscaping around towards the street side that I think you could have addressed. And I would love to see you do that. And for pedestrians walking around it, trying to maximize and create that area, even if the unit has to be moved like 3 feet one way or 4 feet one way just to get it right, from that walkway that's right there. But there's a lot of landscaping in front that could be worked on. There's here landscaping in here that could be worked on that could go towards making this work, and that's my piece.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I'm done. I've said too much already.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Gary, do you have any questions? Paul?
You had them. Well, here's this picture. Do you envision any site furniture? I noticed you got a couple benches there, and I was looking at here.
Yeah, these are the benches right here. I mean, they're hard to read at the scale, I understand.
Okay,
so
that's what
why
these two are.
Exactly.
Okay.
There does need to be some sort of seating. People, people will wait in the front lobby for pickup, but there will also be people.
I was wondering what you were proposing here, if anything, or you're fine with that, because I was looking at the plan, trying to understand how much space is happening between each of these like wings or columns, and then how much from the face to the glass, about how much space we're looking at.
It's very tight. We're very constrained. You've really got about 6 feet, and we've got to, because this is flush with here to here, we will have to put truncated domes along there in order to comply with accessibility.
The 6 feet is from
It's
the width?
6 to 7 from the front of these fins to
Okay.
the edge.
I'm looking at from the front of the fins to the glass.
Oh.
How are you planning it? The
Yeah,
depth.
the depth, yes.
This space in between, what were you planning? Or if anything, are you happy just the way it is? That's what you need to say.
I was happy just the way it is.
Perfect.
You only have
Yeah. The other issue is...
Maybe not.
I could be very happy with it. Is there going to be, or there's handicap parking? Do they come to this door, this entrance? I notice you have 2 here, and there's oodles in the back. But is there a connection that these people who park here would need to get to this zone? Or do they go somewhere else? I don't know how their path of travel works.
I believe, let me just double check the site plan too. I'm not sure those are
I don't
even
think those are
accessible
handicap
spaces, yeah.
spaces,
I think that maybe
Oh.
I just got on that drawing incorrectly, but let me just double check here. So they're not. These are standard spaces. The only accessible spaces in the front are these 2.
Okay, cool.
Chris,
Those are my
questions?
I was curious, the green screen idea, I mean, I understand. Is there a reason you didn't choose a hedge?
No, we could gone with a hedge. I find that the green screen I don't know, it seems a little modern, more clean. It starts to define the space. There is a lot of landscaping in that area. It almost seems like it's pretty thick, and I think a green screen is a little lighter. That's just my opinion.
Okay. And it's 13 and a half feet high?
Yeah, the trailer is 13 feet tall, and so in order to fully screen that, which was what we would intend to do from the street side, is we would need to get that to be a 13.6.
And then
screen.
this area in, I guess, to the east of the new entry, where you proposed benches, is that still benches and pots? Or have you gone back to landscape?
There's some benches there, but you'll notice there's landscaping. So if you look on that 11 by 17, it's got the landscaping that's floating around here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. Well, that shows some landscaping, but the plan itself, this little plan here, that shows that we're filling in some planters in between the benches.
So it is planters, it's not in-ground landscaping?
It's in-ground, I'm sorry.
Okay.
In-ground planters, not pots.
Okay. And I guess I'm a little concerned about having, I understand the need for benches, but if somebody's sitting on that bench and someone else needs to come by in a wheelchair, what do they do with their legs? I mean, it just seems tight there.
It is tight site. I mean, we're limited. We're working within the existing constraints here. There needs to be some sort of bench area.
I'm wondering if it'd be better on the opposite side since you're...
That would be sufficient. We would be happy to put it on the opposite side. I think we could get a little more depth there so that folks could put their feet out the other way. They wouldn't be facing the drop-off area, but I think that's okay. They could keep an eye out. They have their backs turned for it. We would be fine with that.
I think that's all I have for questions. Thanks.
Okay, comments. Clay, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think these two... I'll talk about the entryway first. I think for me, I'm struggling a little bit with the proposal in that I can agree with the concept of warming up against a cool building. I'm not seeing the materials come together in a fashion that I can get behind.
Okay.
I think that this panel system at the end of the day is going to end up looking like a P-lam material in an elevator or something, and it's just going to be, I don't think it's going to look very natural, so you'd have to convince me otherwise, but as I'm seeing it presented today, I can't seem to get behind it. I'm also pretty concerned about this sort of detail here, where there's an awning cantilevered out, and there's this really thin, weird clear story, and what's happening in there. That, to me, doesn't seem very well resolved. And then just as a programmatic thing, for me, I think this creates a hierarchy here, but the entry's over here, and I just find that to be, and I know operationally you're going to have to do what you have to do, but there's, it's not covered in the gaps between the two. So there's an area where you're covered, and then you're not covered. It does rain around here every once in a while. But it just seems like an odd way to enter this space because you've given this such a prowess, whereas this is so mundane compared to it. I like the addition of the landscaping changes that you've made in this zone of the site. I think that that's good. And then the last thing for me is the permanent, temporary, mobile, that'll never move anywhere trailer. I just can't get behind it. I'm not convinced yet. And at this point, I'm not supporting it. And I'll look forward to other alternatives that would hide it, mask it, get rid of it. Because I don't think we'd ever approve it. And I'm concerned that we're giving you forgiveness instead of permission. And I'm not comfortable with that at this point.
Keith.
If we could have those same drawings, the perspectives that Clay was looking at. I pretty much echo Clay's comments on, I'm just not, I don't know if this entry thing is here yet. And and I agree, the kind of programmatic, you got the gap between the two, so in reality, somebody who's getting dropped off here in a wheelchair is getting rained on before they get to the entry. I agree with Clay's comments about trying to make this look like wood when they're so huge that you're never going to have a timber that big, and then all the joinery and stuff. So maybe you can warm it up with some other selection. The Trespa and those kind of things have tons of different colors and materials and whatever. So yeah, I think I would look at something different there, and then just something about the thinness of this one next to that deep one, and this deep one looks a little. It's like kind of like a near miss. Maybe if it wants to be thin, real thin, or if it could just be the same thickness as this one next to it, I think it would just be more successful. So I think all the landscape moves and everything else. I think we're all positive, and I think that this still needs some further thought along those lines. And on the trailer, I don't know. I guess it's really kind of hard for us to approve the trailer, but I don't think anyone's going to make you move it either. So I don't know. You've had it there so long. That's it.
Thanks, Keith. Gary?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to have to concur with the material. I mean, I like natural materials, and I agree with it, but I don't think this building is calling for that, and I think that it really doesn't look right with it. And Keith hit the nail on the thinness of these overhangs. I really think that struck me as well. That these are thin with the large overhangs over the existing windows. It also doesn't concur with the original architecture. So I would really look into getting different material for that. I would stick with stucco, to be honest with you, or concrete. But I think that's been touched on enough. I'm going to touch on the trailer. As far as the landscaping goes, the green screen, I'm okay with a green screen on one side, but we've got 4 sides to a trailer.
It's on 2 sides.
Well, there's 4 sides to a trailer. When you look at it, you drive by, you see the trailer, you see the trailer on side as you're walking up, and then you see the trailer again as you're walking around to it to the entrance that's on the side, where the entrance is actually not in the back of the trailer. It's on the side here.
This is that, yeah.
So you see the trailer again here. You see the trailer as you're driving by, and you see all of it here. So I would be in favor first of landscaping this side of the trailer. We've asked for temporary facades, removable facades in front of trailers before, and even as much as having landscaping continue on here and bringing that trailer forward or something. But I really think it needs to be, if you're going to park it there in that spot, have a spot for it to park in, but make that spot hidden in landscaping, and make this walkway an acceptable walkway to go there. That would be my opinions on if that would be the only way that I can see that trailer would be acceptable. I really think you should look into some interior space on the building, or perhaps an addition to the building for the MRI. I don't think it's proper to have the MRI on a temporary trailer. So.
Thanks, Gary. Paul?
My head was on. I'll follow up with Gary said on the MRI trailer. You know what? You can actually just ask for additional square footage and build a new building right there if it's going to be there for a while. And if you want to make it so it has a roll-up door and you can replace the guts every once in a while, But to have a temporary trailer there and then call it permanent is not what we do in this town. I agree with what people are saying about the material for the wood. I was thinking if you want to do something other than stucco, you could go with an alucobond, kind of a metal where it's more shiny or smooth. You could even go with rib steel of some kind of a standing seam or flat seam. But the wood is not the appropriate look. It does need to be dolled up, and so or warmed up. The area of concern that I have is in between those columns. There is this space between the face of the column and the glass window that's just going to be covered with leaves and dust and stuff. And you can put a couple other benches in there, or you can put a planter in there to sort of add some nice warmth to it. And that should be seriously addressed. Also, I'm not quite sure, but I think like at 7 o'clock in the morning before blood work opens up, there's usually a line of about 10 to 15, 20 people. And those 20 people need benches, and so you need more than just 2 or 3 benches for those early morning blood work things before they fast.
They can't stand. No, just kidding.
No. Well, you go there in the morning at 7:30. There's a good crowd. They've been fasting overnight.
Oh, yeah, they need to sit down. They're weak.
But that's an opportunity to add some warmth that you're looking for. That's it.
I never get there that early in the morning. Chris.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, I'll start in the front, I guess. 2 benches isn't a whole lot up there, and I'm actually asking to move them, across to the other side. It looks like if you keep going west, there's a little space. I know it's not right in the front, but around the corner. I just don't think that on the east side of the entry is a good spot for those benches.
Sorry, can you clarify where
Yeah,
you're pointing at? You were talking about this area?
No, the other side.
Look at this zone right here.
Yeah.
Those should be benches? There should
Well,
be
I'm
benches
saying as
over
far
there.
as maybe a seating area. If there really are 20 people out there waiting, I know they can't interact with the drop-off, but, again, it'd be something for you to look at. Either side, really, because you have a nice
except
big...
that we've moved the entry to the lab exterior here so people would be coming in this way at 7 or 7:30 in the morning.
So
to
how about
lab.
that area?
So there won't be 20 people lined up out here, and there's no reason to have
How about
benches
over here,
over
then?
here.
That would be fine.
And we can create this as
That could be a whole little
seating area.
Yeah. Okay, and so I applaud the addition of the landscaping in the front. The trailer, the green screen, I don't like that idea. That's 13.5, that's higher than this room. And then if those vines die, then people are going to drive by going, what is that? So I would encourage you to get large, maybe 24-inch box ficus or something that would eventually get that high. But again, from the picnic area, you're looking right at the trailer, and there's no disguise for the trailer. So we really need to think about that 360 degrees and how we disguise that. And I think Paul brought up maybe a good suggestion that maybe there's some sort of building that you back it into or something. I don't know what the answer is, but the way it is currently designed, if you are going to use a hedge or something in that area, we need to look at that landscape as a whole and see how we can help to disguise that trailer. And I think that's it for my comments.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So about that trailer, my opinion is that I don't know if it necessarily has to be a building for me, but we can't do anything about trash cans, but we can screen them. So I'm kind of looking at this like a big trash can. But then by the time you screen it, then you have to think of, when we're dealing with trash cans, we're dealing with 6-foot-high walls that screen a trash can. And now we're talking about the size of a screen that's taller than this ceiling in this room. And then it gets to be, why not put a roof on it? That's really what everybody's saying, I think, is just that we can't approve a trailer that just is a trailer. The other ones that we've approved, if I'm not mistaken, have been mobile homes. They're temporary trailers, but they're trailers that are mobile homes that have steps, they have windows and doors. This one actually looks like a trailer that has wheels, that looks like every day it can be just connected to a semi or a truck and then just wheeled away. So the other ones that we've approved actually look like buildings, and they are buildings in a sense. They have skirts on the bottoms. You can't tell really that they're trailers. So, but they're mobile in that you could take everything off of them and then they're mobile homes really. We've approved like mobile home type structures, but not something that looks quite so much like this is a trailer. There's no windows and doors on it.
Well, you
There's
can't
no
have
glass.
windows and doors in an MRI unit.
Right, so that's your problem. I mean,
Right.
it's not your problem, but that's what you're up against, and that's why we're commenting like that, is that, you can say, well, we've approved mobile homes before, but this just looks like a semi-truck that doesn't have the cab attached to it.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Madam
Because it's
Chair.
meant to be hooked up to a truck and then
Yeah.
moved.
Madam Chair.
I kind of mentioned it, Paul.
Real briefly, I was just thinking that, as an option, what do you think about some kind of silkscreen mural on the thing that's a landscape, or, to put a skirt around it and make it blend in a little bit more? Just
Did you say
throwing-
a silkscreen mural that looks like a landscape?
Yeah.
Landscape architect.
Madam Chair.
Some windows and doors
We could
painted
paint
on.
windows and doors on it.
No, let's not go there.
I was actually thinking that the floor level is kind of where this dotted line is, and they kind of have stairs going up to it. Quite often we have a loading dock for a truck that is dug down. This was dug down into that level where it could be wheelchair accessible, plus it would drop the height of this down to a hedge level that would be acceptable. So if they maybe made this into a loading dock area, graded it, I mean, that might be something to look at.
And what we look for is decks and landscaping in front that makes it then look like a building.
Yeah.
But it would have to be removable so that we could take it out, right?
It's up
I
to
mean,
you.
when we need to
You're
take it
saying
out,
you're
so-
never going to take it out.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Right.
If we had not intended to move this in the future, then we would ask for it to be a modular style building, permanent fixture. But we're trying to achieve two things. We're trying to achieve the ability to drive this to Lompoc and Solvang when we need to, and have it parked there as well. So, and we're trying to meet your needs to say, well, it needs to look like a permanent fixture, but it can't function as a permanent fixture. We have no room inside our facility to put another MRI unit.
Okay, I can understand that. I can appreciate that,
and I don't think you want
too.
us building a garage to drive it in and out of, because I think that would look worse than this. I mean, that would look horrible.
Yeah, I'm not.
It all depends on how the garage looks.
Well, then the place to park it is on the picnic area, and we'd have to build a garage, take out the picnic area that our employees and patients use with the tables and the chairs, remove the landscaping, and add a building. I don't think you'd approve us doing that either.
Okay, so here's back to my comment is, I think that I think there could be a solution for me, but with wheels and posts and exposed, the way that it looks now, where you drive up and it looks like what it is, which is a cabless semi-truck, is not enough for me. And the green screen, I think, is too tall, and I think it's going in the wrong direction. I think that landscaping, though, is going in the right direction. So that's my comment about that. And as far as the trellis, I concur with the others on my concern about it, and my concern is that, especially this view, it just looks really heavy, and I don't think that, I think Clay's the one that said it, and I agree that I'm not convinced that the wood is going to make it look like a real materiality for the trellis. But I'm not opposed to the wood, and I like the introduction of a wood element. So for me, it's just an issue of it not quite being there, and maybe it's the dimensions.
Rendering. I mean, it's not.
I know, but
the
it's a
exact
rendering. But
material.
you've given us specific dimensions, 24 by about 8, and those are massive beams, and in between there's no wood elements. So for me, it appears just too heavy, and I know it has to span quite a long distance. It might be 40 feet that it has to span, and that's why you have such a deep beam. But I don't know, it's just, I'll just leave it at, I'm not opposed to the wood, but it's not believable to me yet as a wood trellis. The wood being that massive doesn't read as the right material. And I don't necessarily think that it should be stucco, but I'm just not quite convinced of the wood yet. So those are my comments. Would anybody like to? Yeah.
Going back to the trailer and being polite and saying that there's other options to conceal it if you want to keep it as a mobile facility. An example would be at the bankruptcy court that we have that used to be the I-Magnum. They built something called a Sally Port, which is kind of a screened-in area that they roll the little vans in with the prisoners when they get out, so there's a secure environment. But the wall is probably, maybe 12, 15 feet tall. It has a gate to it, and it has some fenestration or some kind of coping detail along the top. So it kind of looks like a courtyard or it's a walled-in area. But from the outside, it looks like a nice building. It looks presentable versus a building with something looking like a trailer. Another example is, shopping centers have these big, huge, trash compactor-like machines, and they'll put them in some alcove, and they put a really tall block wall around them, and they kind of make them fit the architecture of the shopping center. So there's ways that you can disguise it, make it look like it belongs there instead of looks like it's a trailer, from my perspective.
Okay. Any more comments? Would anybody like to craft a motion? Where are we with this project? We got concept continued item. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. Do you have a question before somebody makes a motion?
Well,
We have some response.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mostly, I just wanted to make sure I understood everything so we can hit it on the head next time. I don't need to beat a dead horse if the wood isn't going to work for you guys. So, we did explore some other options. So I'd love to get some feedback on, is this what you're looking for? Because if it is, Paul has looked at them, and we will be happy to move forward with it. Chris is okay with it, so.
This is all the same one?
Yes, I'm handing out 3 of the same. So, but multiple views. So it's a simple.
So this is the second option.
It's a simple white tube steel and glass canopy. So if that's what you're looking for, then we're happy to move that direction. We wanted to present that option that everyone preferred, but.
Your design.
Madam Chair, I'll jump in. I think
Go ahead.
This direction is a lot more promising than the previous one, and I think it works. The way the lower element runs all the way through, I think that's the gesture you needed to just tie it together architecturally, and it just material-wise and form-wise makes sense. It's not trying to make wood do something that it doesn't want to do. I think the only comment I would have here is maybe these members here might extend past the end, similar to the detail you've done with all the other materials. And I think if you did that, I think it would work.
These beam ends?
Correct.
Yeah. I had a comment as well on this one. I agree with Keith. I strongly agree with Keith that this is the right direction to go after I've seen this. And so I just want to understand. Okay, so the column runs through all the way to the top.
The column sits in front of the fin and runs through the beam and then carries over.
It doesn't connect to the wall.
It doesn't.
It appears to be, it's going to appear to be a freestanding, and then it's supported on the other end as a freestanding trellis.
Correct.
Does it come and hit the top of the building like the other one did?
It hovers over the top of the building. It doesn't really, both of them it appears that they hit, but it's just the angle they hover.
I agree with Keith. Anybody else want to comment on this one? Clay agrees.
It's great, but there's also room for planting or some type of growies in between the columns before the glass at the overhang. Yeah, on the ground level.
Where are you talking about? Keith?
Just like the other one, same.
Something right here. There's a lot of white space.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no one going to be walking in that area, so there's a way that we can green it up.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on this Plan B?
No, I like that.
Okay. So we're back to a motion. Thanks, Keith. Tongue-tied.
At a loss. Okay, this would be an indefinite continuous back to full board with the following comments. The board prefers the alternate canopy design, and would encourage just a little more continuity in the detailing as far as the way the beams run past each other, just to make sure that's all consistent. Regarding the landscape, the board's favorable to the direction and encourages the applicant to develop additional seating and waiting areas adjacent to the entry and existing picnic area. Regarding the trailer, MRI trailer, the board does not find the tall green screen acceptable and encourages the applicant to do further studies that use a combination of landscape and fixed, I'll call it site work for lack of a better term, to potentially screen the trailer. This may involve lowering the parking space to minimize the visible height. That's all I have.
All right. Thanks, Keith.
Because it's a drive aisle. Okay, that's fine. I think we can work it out here.
Would somebody like to second that motion?
I'll second, and under discussion, just in regards to the trailer, just that we look at it from all angles, to study screening from, 360 degrees.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
I have a question.
Oh,
Dawn. I'm
sorry. Go ahead, Trish.
Is this something that needs to come back to the full board? I mean, you all are pretty consistent. I think we get what needs to happen to the entry and the landscaping. Certainly, we need to resolve.
I think the trailer's the big.
If it weren't for the trailer, then
So for the trailer, if we screen this with landscaping on all four sides, is that really what, I want to understand exactly what you're looking for.
we don't have a solution.
Okay.
But what we do know is that we didn't like screening it with landscaping on two sides with that green screen that goes quite so high. That just wasn't working.
Fair enough.
And I think you should study it in 3D. And, I mean, obviously this worked, so I would study it in a way that, from the human point of view, that makes sense.
How do you feel about lattice work to screen it on all, let's say,
That could-
movable.
sides?
We were talking about movable screens, so
Yeah.
I mean that's something.
That's something to pursue, but do you understand the kind of the direction that we were heading you in terms of it not looking like a semi-truck just parked there? And what were you going to say, Gary, really quick?
It's still 15 foot high. I mean, think
Yeah,
we
it's
all
really
said
tall.
about the Sally Port, how we treat trash enclosures. We want trellises over the top of trash enclosures and so forth. So
It may be a combination of all the solutions that we discussed.
Yeah, 'cause if there's a door on the side and you could put a deck to get to the door, and then a trellis over it, and then you could still be able to wheel it up to the trellis and the deck. I mean, those are the kind of things that we've approved in the past. Where you could
I think also it's a study of what's happening with the existing landscape and how to incorporate new landscape to accommodate what we're
Yeah,
requesting.
or a parking spot that it goes into that has landscaping all around of different heights and hierarchy, not just a 13-foot high green screen.
Right, I don't think it has to be 15-foot hedge all the way around it, but like Dawn said, varying heights. It's not like we can't see
It's
any.
not like we don't want to
any
see it
piece
at
of
all. I don't think that's necessarily.
Okay, that clarifies a lot.
What does that make?
Yeah.
Does everybody
So it
kind of
could
agree with
be
me on that?
seen if it's-
Oh, you don't agree. You don't want to see it that at all.
If this is going to be a permanent trailer parked here, then we need a permanent permanent enclosure around it.
Okay. Well, you're hearing what some of the board members are saying, and it's just difficult for us because we don't really have a solution. It's a tough one for you guys. So, okay, so I think that Tony will give you whatever he can give you, Trish. So, any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye of the motion. Okay. Opposed? Motion carries. So we're back on schedule. And we have item number 5, which is 27 East Coda. Oh, I'm sorry. I lied. we have a quick recess, and then we'll be right back. Stay tuned. The Architectural Board of Review for today, May 16th, with item number 5, 27 East Coda Street. This is our third concept review, and in the last meeting, we made the following comments. If you don't mind me just going over those.
No. Madam Chair, I need to step down from the side.
Okay. 1, study moving the enclosure toward the northwest. 2, provide larger scale drawings. 3, provide engineering data showing required clearances. 4, provide photographs of the roof enclosure area.
Great. My name's Tricia Knight, representing AT&T Wireless. Was here a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to start with a photo that one of the board members was able to take from the rooftops of the surrounding buildings that shows the enclosure where there's 2 gaps. There's one on this side, and then there's one on this side where the enclosures are not complete. And so as you're looking here, this here is this enclosure here, which will automatically be closed in, but this is the one that you had a concern about before, that we were not closing in because we had a skylight here, or it's a light well. And we've done 2 things. We were able to move this sector back so that there is no increase in size of the enclosure. And number 2, we are closing this in. There'll be a small door here just for us to be able to get inside of it, but it basically will enclose from this viewpoint the entire screen box on top. So I believe we were able to accomplish everything that you had mentioned last time.
Can we see the elevations?
Yes.
Or a photo sim?
Yes. So photo sim is very similar to the one, we didn't do revised photo sims, as this is the existing screen wall here. There will be, this is what it was going to be wider. We have now moved that back to the original width, so there will be no increase in the width. So you'll basically be seeing this here. So there'll be no larger scale.
But then this wall will extend past that point. This wall gets, where's this corner right here?
This corner is right here. What we had to do is we had to take down all, remember the concern that I had last time was taking down, we basically have to reconstruct this entire thing to move this back.
Right.
So there's no increase in size.
I understand that, but this corner right here is the outside corner.
That is correct.
Then that moves along here.
That's
and
the outside
are
corner
you
there.
increasing? Are you increasing it in this direction than
No.
it existing? So this corner right here is that corner right there.
Correct. That's exactly right.
And the backside will be completely enclosed
Completely
to
enclosed.
match this.
Exactly. So this opening here will be completely closed and of the same height. No height increases.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, we have public comment. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment. And do we have any letters? No. And bring it back to the board with questions. Keith, no questions. Gary? No. Comments? Keith?
There's going to be no increase in scale. It's going to close off that open end. So I think we can make the findings for no visual impact.
Okay, thanks, Keith. Gary?
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate that you closed off that back end, that you jumped on that right away. So thanks
Thanks for the photos, whoever took them.
All did.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So, but yeah, no visual impacts on Keith.
Okay, Paul? Chris? Okay, I agree. So I'm open to a motion. This is a, this would be a preliminary, I guess, or what?
Project design approval.
Project design approval?
If there's more information you need, more details for final, you can give it a project design approval, or you could give it a final.
Do you have connection details and all the structural details about the extensions that you're putting up here?
We don't as of yet. We usually get to that stage as we're after approvals and as we're getting closer to the building permit phase.
Okay.
project design approval as submitted with the finding of no visual impact and final approval on consent.
Okay. And so we'll bring that construction detail back at that time? Okay.
The final drawings that are going to go into the building department, you'll bring back with all the details.
Okay.
Do I have a seconder of the motion? Chris? Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. So now we're back on schedule with item number 6, 513 Garden Street.
Yeah, your set's good, Tony, because you've got those drawings with the plan file, so that's good.
Okay, your name for the record. Your names for the record.
Hi, I'm Barry Winnick. It's good to see
Barry.
you all again. And to my right is Alan Macy, and to my left is David Black.
All right, so do we have, we've seen this before, do we have minutes from the last meeting, Tony?
Do you have extra sets of plans?
Oh, do you have 3 sets of plans? Tony's got them, I guess. That's the last meeting. Are these the same, Barry?
They've changed.
Oh, they've
no,
changed?
No, the sets that you have, all 3 sets are, of course, the same, but we have changed the project a little bit since the last time we were here. I don't know if you wanted to do public comment and all that before we explain it.
No, you do your presentation, but you only have, that's not the most recent set that he's handing out, and you just.
Is this set the same as the set?
No,
that you
they're
just
not.
handed out?
He's saying.
No, they should be.
Oh.
This is the set from Tony. That's the set from Tony.
Okay, they're all. You didn't bring anything in.
I did, but only in case you didn't have them.
Okay.
So those are
We're
all
good.
3 sets of the set.
We're good. So you do your presentation first, and then we do public comment.
Okay, great. Okay, so sort of germane to your question, you asked what had changed. So first, I'll just back up a little bit. In the prior 2 times that we appeared, we were still waiting for our environmental approvals to make it through that process, and that's why you haven't seen us in a little while. We wanted to get that wrapped up before coming back, and I'm pleased to say that it looks like we'll get a CEQA exemption.
Good.
And so that way environmental is behind us. So now we can actually get beyond conceptual. So,
Can I make a suggestion?
yeah.
Do you want to just go through the items that were on the motion from the last time, one by one, and address them as you go?
I guess I didn't do my homework on that. So
You looked at the minutes.
yeah,
And you
but
took
I mean,
notes.
Yeah, I did, but I don't have that in my head right now. So if I need to come back to that, I will.
Okay, go
but
ahead.
I'll summarize basically what we changed because I think
Okay.
that'll dovetail to the same thing. So last time, the largest discussion items were about how tall the building was at the front, at the street level, whether or not it was 1 or 2 stories next to the neighbor to the north. And there were issues about fence heights along the south line and along the north line. And there was also an issue about ADA access at the front of the building. Those were the primary issues. Then the other issues that came up were things like what were the cisterns along the south property line and were they visible? So I'll address each of those. So
Okay.
As we start out towards the street, there was the discussion about 1 or 2 stories facing Garden Street. The conclusion that everyone had at the time was, well, not everyone, almost unanimous, was that it was better as the elevation that we presented with 2 stories facing the street all across the facade. There was the idea of alleviating the amount of light and air available to the tenant to the north, or to the property owner to the north, where there's a small little building there. So what we've done, you'll see when we go to the plan, is we've held back the second floor at the rear of this building has been held back, so it's only a 1-story building with a roof deck, and then put that level, which was there, up on the 3rd floor of this building. And those were sketches that we showed last time as 2 options, and the board pretty much left it up to us to come back with which approach we felt would be the best. So that's in fact what we've now come back with. And I can kind of walk through the drawings. I think that probably is the best way to see it. So again, the street elevation, if I held my hand there where the tree is, it looks exactly the same as it did before. When I move my hand, you can see set back is the third level, which is that one extra unit. So that's the 9th unit. Streetscape stays overall the same. This is looking at one of the internal courts. I'm sorry, it's looking from the north property line, so you'll see that facing the north, we have a 2-story building up front, 1 story at the back, and then across the driveway, you can see the 2nd story where there's a green wall along it, and then the 3rd story. And then the fence facing the north, we lowered that fence. That was one of the suggestions, and we also have landscaped it so that it's rather gentle towards that neighbor. And we're, in fact, putting in a gate promoting that we are able to communicate back and forth across that line. And then on the south facade, which this was, the discussion items on that was to have some variation along the facade. So we're showing that. Where the cisterns are, which are at the bottoms of these recesses, we're continuing the same fencing that you see along the south line, which is a combination of a metal grid fence with slats running through it. We hold them just to the height of the top of the cisterns there, and then here it runs to the height of the fence line. And I'll keep going. Next facade, that's walking through the internal courtyard, let's say, as you would either walk through or drive through. You're going past the buildings at the front, which are 2 stories, and then we've got our green wall, and then you're seeing all the buildings at the back. And then that's the very back. And in plan, it probably all makes lots of sense. So here we are at Garden Street. That's the drive-through. This is where the handicap entrance has now been put in. You'll see that more closely on the other drawings, so that it does come up and ramp in. So that way, that's the main point of circulation. I think in terms of the rest, it's almost all the same. You'll see that that is the green roof at the first level, above that, and then that's the upper unit. And I think I'll just flip the plan really fast again. That's the handicap entrance. Easiest to see on the architectural drawings, that it's ramping inside. This is how we solve the grade problem. So we come up, go through the door, then ramp up, and then get to the general site height that we're at, which is about plus 13 or plus 14 above grade. And David would be able to explain the landscape, and then I'm, of course, available for more questions afterwards.
I can't say that the landscape's really changed appreciably since the last time. The palette of material is still the same. Our intent is to try to use as many native plants. In this case, we've got several varieties of native grasses between the Lamus and the Berkeley sedge and the reed grass in here. The major tree, as we pointed out last time, is the California, or the desert willow rather, Chalopsis, which I'm confident will have a nice upright but spreading character at the same time. Engelmann oak at the back here in this little gathering space, and then California morning glory, this another native on the fencing where we indicated that before. Here's the green wall that Barry mentioned, and then this the structure here has a green wall as well, a green screen, I should say. Well, it's not a screen, screen wall. It wraps around there. And that's really pretty much the extent of it. And then, as you mentioned, the green roof shifts to this structure here on the second floor. That's the extent of it for the most part.
All right. Maybe what I'll do, Barry, if you don't mind, is just now I can read the minutes to make sure we covered everything, and if we didn't, you can cover it before we go into questions and comments.
Certainly.
Number 1 was the board is split on the massing options of a 1-story at the north property line or the addition of the 3rd story. Second, study the property line walls to incorporate additional scale and detail, particularly at more visible corners. Study possible variations in the wood fence material and heights. Study the overall paving design of the project, particularly incorporation and resolution of the ADA access at the drive. Study having a separate ADA pedestrian access. provide cistern material and details, and study opportunities for incorporating additional planting throughout the project, especially along the driveway. Study the trash enclosure to incorporate more planting and open the project. To incorporate more planting and open the project. I'm
Not sure what
that means. The board is comfortable with the bridge element. Did you show us the trash enclosure?
That's this that David just did now.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one that's basically, it looks like a topi area around it. And I think the only thing I didn't address specifically was the breakup of the grade. Like, we covered the handicap entrance, but as you drive in through this way, we are showing grass breakups or planted, you probably use the right terminology, to delineate the paving design. So that's one other element.
And I think even the last time that they'll be planting along here, the green screen, but also, I believe at the last meeting we indicated in the greenery along or the planting space at the base of the fence line, which we didn't have in the meeting before that. So.
Okay. Let me go back. Let's just keep the site plan. Where's the site plan?
I have a loose one. That would make it easier for me.
Here's one. Oh, that's kind of small. That's the perfect one. Okay, so we do have one public speaker. Jenny Brush. Let's keep that one there. Thanks, Barry. And if somebody can give her a place to sit down just for a couple minutes.
Chair Sherry, members of the board, my name is Jenny Brush. I'm the executive director of the County Arts Commission. I'm here to speak in strong support of this project. The Arts Commission recently completed a community needs assessment, and a big part of that was identified the need for affordable live workspaces for artists and the dramatic lack of light industrial space in the area. This project, I think, comes at just the right time, and I think it's a very valuable component of what the arts community needs. I think the location is fabulous, and I think will provide a great resource for collaborative working and creative endeavors and innovation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this project? Tony, do we have any letters or nothing? Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Clay?
Madam Chair, I have a question just about the paving, and we might have, if we covered this last time, I apologize. I just don't remember. But what is the paving? I thought we had a more elaborate design last time, but am I incorrect in that thinking, or is that consistent with what you showed us last time?
It's consistent. Basically, there's a permeable paving material, which is, like pervious concrete, that's back in this area, and up until this point, it's not. That way, we don't deal with the fire truck issues. That's an impermeable paving. But it's the same design as last time. Pretty much precast pavers in that area.
And the parking spaces?
Parking spaces are the same permeable concrete.
Okay. The site plan says gravel on here. Just there was some discussion with staff.
Well,
about that.
I think the terminology, basically the gravel is the permeable concrete material. You're talking about over here?
Yeah. Keynote number 7 says gravel paving. Is that?
That's the permeable concrete. Probably bad terminology.
Those are my questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Clay. Keith?
Just to follow up on that, that's my question as well. So that's like a poured-in-place type of material?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. Gary?
Just one question. Is the bicycle parking, is this in the front right here? Is that the only place you have for bicycle parking? Or?
We also have spaces at the back.
Okay.
How do you get to those spaces? I mean, how do you get to these two? Just looking at that.
You know what? This is my.
Not that I don't think you're going to figure it out
No,
eventually.
No, let me
but-
look in the architectural because I think that may have less planting showing. Hold on.
Well, there's paved surface there.
Right, but she's wondering how you get by.
Oh, this is
This is paved.
this is paved and this is just grass. You
Is
can
that
just
paved
go
as
on the
well now?
grass. Is that what?
Yeah, I think I didn't catch up. I'm sorry. That's been. He's got that paved too.
Looks like. Where am I?
That got solved in the landscape.
See,
Oh, I get it now.
This is meant to be a patio, but it'll have either planted or gravel joints, but it's a hard surface you can get onto.
That makes
Plantings
sense.
around it.
Go ahead, Gary.
Good catch.
Some of the colored elevations pertaining to this existing tree and the limbs. And my question really is, have you mapped out this limb that's shown in elevation? That one's a good one. There's this limb that's from, the tree is actually planted on your adjacent neighbor's property and it goes over here. Have you mapped out this limb or will that limb have to get chopped off?
We haven't gone to that level, so I mean, we did represent it as best as we could on the drawing.
Okay. Because you're representing it on this other view as this limb being in front of the building to create the illusion that the building is beyond the limb. So that's what I was just trying to understand.
I don't think there's a conflict, or will be a conflict.
Okay.
Just based on what I remember about the tree, it's pretty upright, so I think it's actually in front of the building rather than.
Okay.
Yeah, and we may be illustrating it more in front of us than it actually is. I mean, it's in front. It's not. It's basically a city street tree.
I was looking at this tree.
Oh,
It
that
looks like a
one.
willow maybe or a pepper.
Yeah, but the one that you're looking at in front is representative of that one. I'm not sure we represented that one.
Okay, so then the neighbor's tree that's in his courtyard, whether it's a willow or a pepper, it has a limb that comes over. That'll have to get cut off at the property line, most likely.
If it's obstructing the
so
two-story.
that's
it's
the
plausible. Yeah.
That's the tree that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I would have the photos. Hold on.
Okay.
We have an 11 by 17 of that. Oh, you got those?
Got it.
Yeah, those are the minis. This is actually a little bigger. Oh, yeah, you may have it.
I'm sorry. Yes.
I think you're talking about this one here, possibly? Is that the tree you're
That's
talking
the
about?
tree I'm talking about.
Yeah, so some of that would have.
It's pretty much right at his corner of the building. I mean, I don't know where it is, but this limb would have to get taken
Correct.
off. The tree is back here.
That would, absolutely.
Okay. And then have you discussed this project since the last iteration with the adjacent neighbor and showed him the two different options and told him that you're going to basically have the garden space in the back? Have you shown that to them?
We have not gone back to him. But he was here for that presentation, though, so that he was part of that. Well, not part of the discourse, but he was here to overhear that discourse.
Yeah, Elaine was here. But you never went back and said, we decided this is the direction we're going to go. So
It was important for us to come back to the ADR.
Okay. Cool.
Any more questions, Paul?
No, that's all my questions. Thank
Chris?
Well, I'm a little confused on the pervious concrete versus gravel thing. Is this a poured-in-place pervious concrete, or is it gravel?
It's a poured-in-place pervious concrete.
Okay. So no,
Yeah, I mean, it's
no
just
loose
bad
gravel.
terminology on that
Okay.
drawing.
And then the planted joints, the delineating the spaces, right?
Mhm.
What are the width? 4 or 5 inches?
Which area are you speaking of?
He's talking about these
where the
little
parking
spaces,
zone is.
the delineations. I'm going to guess 6 inches.
Yeah, and have you decided on a species there yet?
No.
Okay. And then just one other question on one of those rendered elevations again. Right here. This is the parkway, and is that a raised planter of some sort in there? It shows up on a couple of those.
When you say parkway, are you talking about right here?
No, I'm talking about here.
We're not
In the public right-of-way.
Right, we're not raising anything in the public right-of-way.
Okay.
We do have these little benches here in front, but
So
they're
are
off
these
the right-of-way.
trees supposed to be out further on these elevations?
Yeah, because I think what he's saying is that if you look at this wall
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think this is an errant. I think that's a mistake. This is the raised
So
That's the
elements there.
raised
Yeah,
element.
this is our artistic license getting a little out of control. Yeah.
I It's in the Parkway.
Yeah, plan governs is a nice way to say it.
So that, basically that brown.
That's a mistake.
Okay.
Okay, just
Thanks.
clarification. Thank you.
I had one question. Is that it, Chris?
Mhm.
I had a question about, do you have another plan that shows what all these blocks are? Like where the property, where is that plan that shows what all
I
these
do.
represent? These buildings?
Here's an aerial view. Hang on.
And then there's some significant trees back here somewhere. I'm looking at
Sorry.
this area, and this is the south property line as it goes back. And so I was looking at where, it looks like they overhang the property, but if the property jogs, that's the property line, right?
Yes.
So are the
Correct.
trees, like where are the trunks of those trees? And I just wanted to look
Maybe
at.
this will help.
Yeah, maybe.
Let me turn it the same way. So it's different scale, but that gives you a pretty good idea of what's there existing.
Oh, they're up close.
Yeah.
Those trees are, those big trees, which are these trees,
Mhm.
they're up pretty close to an overhanging quite a lot. You're just gonna, because your building's a two-story building right at the property line, are you just gonna chop all those branches off?
If they're at the same height as the building, yeah.
That's why you don't have trees on the
Yeah.
The tree would be pruned.
Pruned,
It won't be-
selectively
it won't
pruned.
Be, it won't be chopped. They'll be pruned.
Chopped. That was harsh, huh?
My business, yeah, that was harsh.
I don't know.
It looked like a harsh thing to be doing to those trees, that's why I brought that up.
It looks pretty chopped.
Where are those trunks, David? Do
Um,
you have any idea where the trunks are and how close they are to?
I need a survey to look at.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
well,
we didn't
something
survey
to
that.
look at because I'm just concerned about all of that. Shouldn't have marked on your.
It's
computer
okay,
at all. I'm
not to
sorry
worry.
about that. And then this building is that's a trailer.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm trying to just see where the buildings are.
they're all buildings lacking merit. I mean,
But are there houses and things? I know there's a house here.
right. Most of this stuff is slated to be demolished, quite honestly. People are buying it to develop it over time. This is the Haley Cottages.
residential.
These are all buildings that look like they're going to fall down. I mean, it's
This whole alley here is just filled with kind of old junky cars. It kind of is an L lot, but these are all like just old cars and stuff.
Okay.
It's a very narrow lot that comes out.
This is a lot in and of itself. This little one.
yeah, it's a little flag
so it's
lot.
like a driveway, really.
Oh, it's a little driveway, and then that is a trailer,
Yeah, I think
Correct.
so,
and that's a what?
That's
Wait,
a-
there's not a building there anymore. I was looking more at this two-story.
Mhm.
That's a building, of some sort. Do you have any photos of that building?
There's open space adjacent to these two buildings.
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's it. Comments? Clay?
Madam Chair, I continue to like this project, and I think that the change or the removal of that one container where is it? On the second floor, moving that up to the third floor, I think it's a good solution. Seeing as that's pretty well back from the street. I think it helps increase the light as the light comes around for the neighboring commercial building. So I think I'm supportive of that move. I don't have any other real substantive comments other than I think the project has developed nicely and has kind of addressed some concerns. The one comment I might add is the container/trash enclosure probably should have either venting or an open roof or something that, otherwise that could be a pretty icky place to go in. Use a Paulism. But other than that, I think the project's a good project, and I'm excited to see it get developed.
Thanks, Clay. Keith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I echo Clay's comments. On the neighboring trees, I'm not too concerned about it. I think the applicant's in their right to prune them as needed. that's what happens when you have trees on the property line. It's obvious that the neighbors haven't kept them from growing over the property lines. Only other comments I would have would be, I like the breakup of the paving, and I'd encourage you to see if there's any other kind of similar breakups you could have. And then the only other comment is, I think from our last meeting, the comments about studying the blind walls that are kind of most visible, and they're still shown as sort of uniform color, sort of these areas. I still would encourage you to try to study some way to create a little more variety there, just since they will be visible, at least for the near future until something's built next door. But other than that, I think it's a really nice project, like I said.
Gary?
Yeah, I appreciate the reduction in the fences and the green fence. We still have a little bit of a high fence on the other side, but I think that's a little more doable. I agree with Keith about trying to add some sort of different element to actually both sides of these, at least close to the street, that will break it up a little bit. I'm a little concerned about the front area right here. We got some bicycles in a landscaping area that I think really shouldn't be there. We've got a minimal landscaping in the front anyways. And I'm not really sure. I mean, I do like the idea of this table and bench on one side, but to have benches and table bench on one side and lose the landscaping is kind of a concern to me. So I really would rather see one get lost and maybe a little more landscaping than it's kind of lacking in landscaping to begin with. So I do like the character of that. I think it's clever to have the table and chair, but too much. I just think it's a little too much. So that would be my only comments.
Thanks, Carrie. Paul?
I like the project, like a lot of it, all of it. The only part I don't like is the two-story element here. So I'm not going to be in favor of the project, and I'm just going to reiterate it just for the record. And it's only because of this one-story corner and the fact that this goes down to a low shed roof, and this is going up so tall, and it's just going to be a stark exposed corner. And I just have to hold my ground on the reason why I don't like the way that this is being addressed, this corner right here. And what I would say is the building that's next door is going to be there for a while. It's in halfway decent shape, and so this corner is going to be really exposed. And we need to look at the sensitivity of new structures and how they relate to the old. I understand it's a zero lot. What I sense or what I saw as an opportunity was like Art from Scrap has a roof deck that they sometimes use, and they throw things up there, and it relates to the street. When you have your upper deck on the inside courtyard, you're able to use it for your stuff, but then it creates this hard edge that's hard against this corner. So I understand why you picked one over the other, but I think the sensitivity to the adjacent neighbor would be more important. So, but it's a wonderful project other than that.
Thanks, Paul. Chris?
Yeah, I agree with the rest of the comments that have been said here. The one thing since you mentioned those trees, Don, is you have a lot of solar up on that second story, right in that location. Those trees look to be about 40 or 50 feet tall. So I'm just worried, and I would just encourage you to look at the solar access in the wintertime for that location, for the solar panels. Beyond that, I think, I'd still love to encourage finding green space, but I know we're getting limited there. So I think, it's definitely moving in the right direction. It's looking good.
Great.
All right. My only concern is shared by Paul, actually, about this two-story element here. And that one-story little house that's right next to it. And I do understand the zero lot line issue, but the houses are first, and you guys are putting up this huge two-story wall, and you're the first one, so you can do that, as far as I'm concerned. I'm okay with that. I'm not really okay with completely blocking. If I'm looking at it right, help me, Barry, on this. It goes to here, the two-story?
Correct.
It goes to there, right?
Right, well, the actual unit goes to here, and then the stair leading to it comes to this point.
But the stair, there's a landing there, but you're still choosing to do a two-story even though there's a landing right in the middle, right? If I'm reading this right, it's right here. So I don't really have a real scale, but I was kind of just using my poor man scale. So it covers, you're completely, your two-story is going to there,
right.
to that grid line.
So here's what the trade-off was. In last presentation, we showed several options. We showed a one-story scheme at the front, as well as the two-story scheme, and looked at the possibilities. And with the one-story scheme, pretty much, other than Paul, everybody that was here felt that the elevation was not as good. And then the point was brought up that, in fact, if we're concerned about light and air to this building, that this facing to the south and to the west is actually going to generate more light and air based on where the sun travels during the day to reach this building. So by holding this portion down to one story, we were actually arriving with more light and air for this building than we were by trying to hold it off at the front. That was the logic behind how we chose.
Yeah, I understand. I can understand that. What are the stairs made out of?
They're, metal stairs.
So why does the two-story have to go all the way to here? Because this is just a landing. It's only half a story. Could it be more transparent so that the second story only has to come to here?
Yeah, conceivably we could do that. The only thing we want to do is shield the cistern, but that's not even one story. So I don't see a problem with just holding it down to the landing, which in fact would also address one of the other comments we've heard about having more variation along the lines. Pardon me?
What you've done here.
Yeah, we could in fact do that. So yeah, I would think that would help alleviate it. So what you're saying is now from here to here is basically one story, and only that portion is two-story. So that would be plausible.
Yeah, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable about the project. And that's really my only comment. Everything else I really like. But I do have to admit that I wasn't here in the last meeting, but I think I got brought up to speed on that one and two-story thing. So, okay. So we're not being asked to make any kind of approval at this hearing. We can't do that.
No.
It has to go to.
They're requesting a project design approval with development plan approval findings. And staff also has some conditions we'd like for you to add to your motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I sent the applicant a letter telling about the outcome of our environmental review. They had to do several studies, archaeological study, drainage report. The Regional Water Quality Control Board was involved because the site's receiving some groundwater contamination from an old Mission Linen dry cleaners nearby. And they also did a geotechnical report. So we're asking that there be an item in your motion, a condition that says the project's design will incorporate all the recommendations of all these reports. The project is designed to incorporate all the recommendations of these reports.
Okay.
And also, can I just add that, I mean, we'd find it acceptable to have this conditioned with the revision at that one location, that we hold the heights down.
Okay.
I see no problem with doing that.
All right. So would anybody like to make a motion for?
So this will be for project design approval, and we need to make all the compatibility findings. So compliance with the city design guidelines, compatible architectural character of the context, is appropriate size, mass, bulk, and scale. Does not affect adjacent landmarks or public views, and has appropriate amount of open space and landscaping. make the approval with the following comments: that the project design is to incorporate the recommendations of the technical reports required by planning, that the building mass at the north stair is to be lowered in a similar manner as the stairs at the south elevations. The applicant's encouraged to find additional opportunities for introduction of more planting material, and is encouraged to study and incorporate architectural features to add some additional variety, scale, texture to the exposed blind wall corners at the north and south edges.
All right. Do I have a seconder of the motion? Seconded by Clay. Under discussion.
This is preliminary with final and consent?
We didn't discuss consent, but how does
This was one. It's for preliminary.
it's for project design approval.
Project design.
So we didn't discuss consent. Do you want to send it to consent? Full board. Because of those things.
I would agree.
I agree with that myself, actually. Go ahead, Tony. What?
We do need the development plan approval findings.
Keep adding.
What all is involved in that?
Okay.
I think we can make.
Oh, he's looking at that. There was a comment about opening the roof to the trash enclosure. Does that want to make it into the motion?
Yeah,
Or-
under discussion, I was just going to suggest it.
Okay. And does the study of the landscaping comment that you made include studying the landscaping at the front elevation with regards to the, does anybody else have a concern about the bike racks and the furniture, the loss of landscaping?
Kind of takes away.
General and fine.
Okay. Okay. And does that also include the study of the breakups of the paving? Okay. That's where that was coming from.
I would also add, Madam Chair, about the solar access for the trees to the south of the site, that the applicant just studied the location of the solar panels.
Say applicants taking into consideration the potential impact of the trees on the south property line to their photovoltaics.
You got that, Gloria? Okay. Tony, did you find anything?
It might be sufficient to say that you made the development plan findings.
It'd be nice to know what they are.
Let's just suffice to say that we've made the development plan approval findings. There's a whole laundry list here. Does anyone?
Want to summarize them?
I don't know if they can be summarized. The proposed development complies with all provisions of this title, and the proposed development is consistent with the principles of sound community planning and aesthetics, character, and the size, bulk, and scale of the development will be compatible with the neighborhood, and the proposed development will not have a significant unmitigated adverse impact on the city and the South Coast affordable housing stock, and the proposed development will not have a significant unmitigated adverse impact on the city's water resources, will not have a significant unmitigated adverse impact on the city's traffic, and resources will be available and traffic improvements will be in place at the time of the project occupancy.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? One in opposition? Paul? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, continuing on to, thanks, Gary.
Share them with the neighbors.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Item 7, 530 West Coda Street.
Oh, someone left a bag. Thank you.
Oh. Hi, Mark. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, Chair Sherry, members of the board, Mark Miranda, agent for the owner, Terry Trevelyan.
Okay. Tony's got plans.
I have some extras if you need them. You saw this project a few weeks ago.
Okay. Let me just read the comments really quickly. We were continued to staff hearing officer. Is that the one?
Correct.
So you've since been to staff hearing officer?
No, we're looking at a different fence that we were proposing that actually requires a mod, given the grading next door as well.
Okay.
It's not along the building.
Do you want me to read this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Number 1, the 36-inch retaining walls at the sidewalk along San Pasqual and Coda are supportable. 2, the 4'8" CME wall closing the gap between the existing wall and the adjacent parcels is appropriate as a modification. 3, the overheight fence along the property line is not supportable. Applicant is encouraged to use landscaping for privacy screening. 4, return with a landscape plan addressing the areas that have been disturbed.
Correct. So we got rid of the 6-foot fence. Let's go to the site plan here. This is San Pasqual and Coda. So this was the area of the wall that was missing, that was 4 feet wide, 4 feet 8 high, and then it ramps up. And this is the Habitat for Humanity's wall with the guardrail on it. Well, when you come to the end, the building ends probably about 15 feet from the end of the wall, and that's their property line. We had a fence here, but when you look at it, it's within the setback. It falls off precipitously on this side. So on the back page, there's a couple sections where, if you look at it up the hill, which is, some photos might help you a lot in this case. From the back side, looking at the property, the fence is going right along here. There's actually an old post. The fence is going to be like 5 feet high, so it's going to come up to the same height as here, and it's going to run all back along the property. So on the other side of this post...
Is this the back? I'm sorry, this is the back of the property, right?
Right. This is all the way... Just kind of looking back towards Wentworth.
It's way back here.
Yeah, it's way back here. So Wentworth comes around the corner, and there's a couple parcels here. And this is the alley of how the Habitat comes into their property.
Before you were proposing an overheight fence along here, right?
Correct.
So now you're not proposing that at all?
No, that's just going to be the landscaping
That you're going to go over?
Correct. No,
So-
yeah, eventually.
And then, because you brought, well...
I didn't bring any landscaping. I was just looking at this particular mod, and then we'll come back with the landscaping later.
So where's the elevation of that again?
If you look at it from the Habitat side as you come in, this is kind of their alleyway that leads to it. So this is the property line between them and the neighbor here. And looking over at Terry's property, here's the wall that ends. The fence would be going perpendicular to this, and it'd be about the same height. But when you look at what's happening directly below it, is this picture right here. When they graded the Habitat lot, they also graded the neighboring lot, and they cut it so there's about a 5'9" drop here, and we're proposing a 5-foot fence that's going that way. So right at this point in here, it's 10 feet 9, and it's only allowed to be 8.
Okay.
It's kind of hard because there's so many different property lines running in different directions, but basically if you looked at it, there's a better picture. Right.
That grade here, it drops off a section.
Right, so there's the fence that we're proposing along the property line, and if you were standing on the other side of it looking up, you would see the fence here, and then the wall drops off, and then that's where this condition is. So it's about 10 feet 9 inches to the top of the wall, and we're just proposing a 5-foot wall, which won't be really any higher than the existing wrought iron wall here. It'll just be a few inches higher than this.
You're proposing a fence, not a wall.
A fence, 5-foot fence. Well, a wall, same, in the sense it's the same.
Okay, and then did you bring a landscape
No.
plan?
No, we're in the process of hiring a landscape architect.
Okay, let's go back to the site plan and leave it open.
So we actually, since the interior setbacks here, here, and here, we kind of need an interior mod for this condition and then also for the way that it falls off of the habitat side. This is looking down that property line from down the hill.
From the top, looking kind of that way? Is that
It's
what that
looking, it's looking down this way.
Right.
Towards the little car that's parked down here.
Okay, we got it.
Okay.
So, I'd like to open public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak about this project? No. Tony, do you have any public comment? No? Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Clay?
I don't have any questions.
No? Anybody at that end of the table? Comments? Chris? Do you have any comments?
Madam Chair, I have no comments at this time.
Paul?
I would say the project's ready to go to staff hearing officer and then back.
To either full board or consent with the landscape plan.
Yeah, I'd say the modification request is reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. It seems like the mod is just technical in nature given the existing grading conditions. So let's move it forward.
Okay, so
I'll make a motion for indefinite continuance to the staff hearing officer. The following comments. The board feels that the modification has no aesthetic impacts and is technical in nature and looks forward to a landscape plan coming back on consent.
Okay, thank you very much.
seconder? By Chris? Any further discussion? No, all those in favor? Aye. Aye, opposed? One abstention, Clay? Okay.
All right, thank you.
One abstention, yeah. Thanks, Mark. All right. Moving right along to our last item, 130 South Elisa Street. It's a new item. Proposal for a new two-story residential building with a 941 square foot 4-car garage and 1 dwelling unit consisting of 312 square feet of habitable space on the first floor and 1,156 on the second floor. Your name for the record?
My name for the record is Justin Van Mullum. I'm with On Design Architects. And this, you may recognize this site because there was a project that was being processed, not by my firm, but by another firm. And we've taken a look at it, and we've kind of gone a different route. The history of this, first of all, let's look at the aerial. So this is Alisos, and this is the freeway, and there is a street that's going to go straight through right here eventually. And so with Caltrans needing that land, there was an existing building that, here, let me put it the same direction. And that building was removed because a portion of it was in the area that Caltrans needed. You can see here's Cacique, and Cacique is going to go all the way through underneath the freeway. There is a lovely craftsman house kind of buried here in this dark tree-lined area. And I've got some better photographs of it, but I wanted to have a few panoramics. So this is that middle house that's right here. And then you've got this kind of 1960s looking carport that is here. And then this is a two-story, 3 units in the back. This is across the street. And then there's the Cacique Road you can see that'll eventually go through. Moving along. Here's a few more pictures of the neighborhood. You can see some neighboring houses. And then you get just a glimpse here. It's hard to capture this house, but there are some nice little details. It's a little craftsman kind of bungalow, arts and crafts style house. And then some other neighborhood houses. And then there's that second story that is right here. A few more photos of the site. Just a big patch of dirt and a bunch of pieces of equipment that Caltrans is using. But then a little bit more of that house that's so hard to capture. Here's a kind of a preview of a street elevation. There's that house with all the cute little craftsman details, and then this is what we have. And here's the patch of land that we're using, 10-foot setback, 10-foot setback, and 10-foot setback. So it's a triple front yard, in essence. There's our porch. So we've gone about 10 feet with this piece here, and then we have a porch element. And kind of very similar to what's happening in this location. This is just showing that we meet our open yard. These days you need a whole plan just dedicated to that. And here's our floor plan. So we have a 2-car garage, 2-car garage, a bedroom downstairs, covered porch. You go to a landing, you go straight up. And this is open floor plan, deck to meet our open space, and then washer and dryer would go here. And we've got 2 bedrooms, or I'm sorry, 2 bathrooms back to back with a couple bedrooms, short hallway. The concept for the architecture is more of a carriage house style because we have so many garages, but we wanted to have the element in the front have more of a address the street with a porch that was usable. And then you've got some board and bat and some cupolas. We put some windows in the back, even though there's garages, to help break up the fenestration. Break it up with fenestration. We have a kind of a belly board, kind of smack dab right in the middle to help. And we've done a 2-tone using similar colors to what's existing on the site. I'll open it up for questions.
Okay, first we have public comment, and there's nobody in the audience to speak on this project. Tony, do we have any? No letters. I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Anybody have questions? Yeah, not yet.
I had one.
Go ahead, Chris.
It was regarding the proposed parking. I guess it looks kind of doable. I guess transportation has seen this already.
No, transportation hasn't seen it, but we did a study with templates on a page that isn't part of this, but I think it's part of what we submitted.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. We just did it with a template.
Okay. I was just looking at these spaces initially, going, how does this guy back out?
There's actually plenty of room.
Worked it. Okay. And that's all I have for questions at the moment.
I have a question. These look to me to be the same dimension, even though you don't have dimensions on here in this direction. But then there's this
There's a
cantilever.
one dimension, just right here.
Oh, there it is. But there's no dimension here. So is it the same?
Are they stacked?
Yeah. Where's the cantilever? Where's that cantilever?
Cantilever, that would be, there's this right here.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Just helps break up the elevation.
And it's hard to read on this, but it's right there.
Right. There's a little shadow line.
I see it. Any more questions?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
One item that came up in environmental review was the noise level as it appears on our MEA maps. And we may be requiring a noise study. We're not sure because of the proximity to the freeway.
Okay.
So that might be something to give some thought to. And
All
also
right.
with regard to the open space and the noise level in the open yard area.
What about the open yard area?
The freeway is raised up, so it's kind of creates its own sound shadow.
Is actually your private outdoor living space on the second floor in that courtyard?
It is.
This deck is your outdoor living space?
It is. We have another outdoor living space that is provided on the lot, which is has a minimum requirement of 15 by 15, but we've made it quite a bit larger.
Okay.
Here, but you can see that we can make it much larger because we've got that space, and I suppose we could have shown it it was confusing if we could show it in that front yard because even though that's next to the freeway, it is considered a front yard, which I never knew. And that's going to be the quietest place on the outside is going to be as close to the freeway as possible because that's where the sound shadow is, because it's raised up.
Any more questions?
I
Yeah.
just have one question. It's kind of confusing me, so I'm just going to ask it. Can we go to the site plan real quick?
This one looks better.
Justin, we're showing this trash. This is a new located trash enclosure, it looks like.
Right.
And with a fence around it. It's kind of, am I reading this correctly? There's a parking space. It kind of butts up here. So how are we getting to this, say, from that unit? It seems clear from these units, but it just seems like this connection is a little
What
tight.
you're seeing is there was a change made. The parking used to be pushed in a little farther so you could access that path from this area, but to get this required open yard out of the front yard, we pushed everything back a little bit. And so that is something that we can definitely address.
It's unresolved yet.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's a good catch.
I have
It worked at one time.
Oh, I know how that.
I have another question, Justin.
Yes.
This window here, I'm not seeing it here. Did you just mean that there should be this window and it should be over here? Is that kind of is
Yes.
that what you meant?
Yeah, that's
There should be a little window
sometimes
right
the
here.
floor plans of
Right,
the
I know,
elevations
I know.
evolve after the floor plans have been done, and it's another.
And the renderings are done. And
Yeah.
I know. So, but you intend for it to look like this?
Yes, so we'd have to move the window on the floor plan.
Okay, comments. Who wants to start? Clay? Not really? Okay, go ahead, Keith.
One would hope that you would be able to have your trash enclosure next to the freeway, but I realize that would probably create a mod because it's just too logical, but it just seems like it's a waste of space and good ground when you're next to the freeway, but that's just me. Other than that, mass bulk and scale, all that is fine. I think On this long elevation, it would be nice to maybe introduce a little more
Color.
variety to the long gable. I don't know if this wants to get clipped at the end, and then just maybe some more variety with the fenestration proportions or something. They're all just kind of the same shape, which is, I don't know. And then, I don't know, we'll see what the other board members feel, but I think the porch is nice, but somehow the gable, the high gable, with the high gable behind it on the second floor with minimal fenestration kind of, I don't know. I would think maybe a different porch roof, maybe something that sheds to the street might be a little better, bring the scale down of the building, but the mixed materials and all that looks.
If I did
looks
that, I
good.
might be able to keep the window where it was supposed to be.
There you go. So anyway, I think just those kind of architectural massaging would be all it needs. That's it.
Gary?
Yeah, it's kind of strange seeing this one come back again. I suppose the two-story works in this area. The only thing I'm concerned with is that really the front of the house is the most traveled street is going to be Cacique Street, and you got a 10-foot setback. You're not really proposing any backyard space or a large fence there. So I'm a little concerned with this elevation right here being a little lackluster in details, and I think that some elements on this side of the building should be introduced as well. Keith talked about the interior one, but I really feel like this elevation needs some work. I'm also a little curious about what the lower floor treatment is. Is that a 4-foot wide bat, or what are you proposing here?
Sorry. Hardy board makes 4x8 sheets that you can actually hide the seams with like a board and bat. So it's just a little wider treatment.
So it's a 4-foot wide bat, basically.
Yeah, center on center.
Okay. I'm not that comfortable with that treatment. I mean, it's not really a treatment that was done in a Craftsman style at all. They didn't have 4x8 sheets of anything, and so I'm not really comfortable with this lower treatment of the floor. So
Just, yeah, you'd be more comfortable if it matched the upper floor.
or a different treatment altogether. But yeah, I would be more comfortable if it matched the upper one as opposed to having the 4-foot wide bat.
Paul? Thanks, Gary.
Similar comments of Keith.
And Gary.
That's it? Chris? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree with Gary that this, I guess that's the east side facing Cacique, and that corner will be key for either bringing up the architecture or well, I look forward to the planting plan, basically, and seeing what you're doing with that side yard space to help break that area up. Other than that, I think it looks fine and should be ready for probably project design.
Okay. All right, I agree with Gary on this elevation, the east elevation. It's a street frontage, and I don't understand. I'm not seeing how that's going to work. I would prefer to see a traditional board and bat, and maybe even consider a large bat, a wider bat, something different. I don't know, just
More like board on board, or
yeah, board on board or something more traditional for this neighborhood. And I think the massing is fine in this area, but I wish there was more of an offset between the first and the second floor. And I normally don't request or would say to cantilever the upper level over the lower level, but there's something about this 2-story and this 2-story just all really boxy that's just bothering me a little bit. And maybe it's because there's really no relief to these elevations, and maybe that's why I'm trying to find relief. And I'm having a problem with the front elevation because it's right next to the really traditional house, but there's no windows down here, and there's no windows up here. So to me, it looks very utilitarian.
We
and
do have some opportunity for windows in
I
there.
think you do.
Yeah.
That's my point. You have no windows facing the street, and it doesn't look like a front porch anymore. It looks like it wants to be a front porch, but it's not really a front porch because there's not a big window there. And I know the upper levels is the main living space, but so that's another issue. And the cupolas are. I wish they did something like bring light in, and I know that's probably not possible, but it looks like there could be an opportunity to, and the inside's not our purview, but it looks like they would fall in this hallway, and they'd be more believable to me if they had windows in them, or they were bigger, or something is not quite right with them. I don't know what it is. I'd kind of like you to study the cupola concept. So that's it for me. And this would be a comment-only motion.
Madam Chair, just my comments echo.
Oh,
what
yeah, sorry about you.
What everybody said, with the only addition is that I think you, in your presentation, Justin, you brought up this building having this existing craftsman-style building having a nice charm, and you've even rendered it that way.
Yeah.
And it's not there yet on the new building. And my feeling is, with a little bit more study on it, you're going to get the right materiality and the massing to work.
And I do really appreciate those details on that existing building. I was trying to do something a little different because it has, its size is more charming, and do more of like an agricultural type of carriage house. So that was the goal, and that's why I think I went with the board and bat and the cupolas. But I understand with maybe a little bit more detail.
Okay. I agree with what others have said.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion? It would be for indefinite continuance. You have, haven't you?
They only serve decaf coffee here.
Oh, now we're protesting. We're at a standoff.
I wasn't thinking Coke was next.
Okay, so the motion would be for the applicant to study the. I shouldn't craft the motion because I made the most comments.
You can actually lower the motion and see if someone agrees with
Okay.
you, and then they'll first it and second it.
This would be an indefinite continuance back to the full board for the applicant to, number one, study the massing and ways to introduce more variations in let's see, somebody help me. More variations in the massing. More breakups in the massing. Articulation in the massing. That's a better way. Thank you. Study the front, in particular, study the front and, which is study both street elevations. Let's see. Study the materiality of the proposed exterior materiality. I'm trying. And let's see, the trash, I think will resolve itself. I don't know if I even need to put that on there, but so I think Justin gets it. So that's the floated motion. If somebody wants to take it and run with it.
I'll first it.
First by Paul.
And under
second by
discussion,
Clay. Under discussion.
the motion that I just crafted, we had some comment about resolving the sound issues for the outdoor living area with staff.
Okay. That would be a good comment to add.
Make sure that it's done in a traditional style.
Traditional craftsman, freeway landscape.
Exactly what I was thinking. Any further comments?
I would just say that the landscape portion will